Why does art matter? It's a big question and one that a lot of people have asked. I personally ask it because, knowing why it matters is very helpful for having my own personal purpose with art. But we're going to get deeper into that in a second. First of all, I just want to welcome everybody to the show. Again, as you all know, my name is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com. This is technically the Early Bird Artcast number. I have no clue because I have stopped numbering them. And I have once again a continuation from last week. I have Samax Amen on again. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's great to talk to you, Marshall, always.
Absolutely. And as always, I would like to let's just shout out where people can find you before we get into this topic.
I do have I'm a URL junkie. I'm recovering. I'm getting better. So samaxamen.com and you'll have it in the description, so I won't spell it.
Hmm.
Ghettomanga.com is probably the most entertaining place to go because I write about other people's stuff also, not just mine. But I mean, if you're interested in me, samaxamen.com is going to be the easiest. Um, and starvingartistanonymous.com. I would recommend going to the Facebook page for any of those, and signing up to the email. If you really enjoy and you want to get everything that I got, the best thing to do is sign up for one of my email lists. Um, Generally speaking, you can customize them based on what you're interested in. I'm kind of on a mission to do uh, frequency, so you're going to get a lot of emails, but you're going to enjoy opening them if you like me and you like the stuff that I'm talking about. Because as Marshall could tell you, I just basically it's going to be like this conversation when you read the emails. It's like I just talk about whatever's on my mind. When I'm trying to sell something, I do sell it to you, but I don't hammer you over the head with that, and I don't try and make you feel bad if you never buy anything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's always interesting content, and it's not like, okay, this is like 5 steps to you buying my thing. This is,
right,
it's, hey, look at this. This is really cool. And by the way, I also have this service, type of.
right. That's how I wound up having my art career really expand was by um, ghetto manga, which is mostly not about me, but people enjoyed reading it and they liked me, and so when they found out that I could do things, they wanted to pay me to do them, which I appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
One other quick thing that I wanted to mention is we have questions left over from last week. We're going to get to those as soon as we're done, kind of really jumping on a topic real quick.
Hmm.
And then we have some other questions that people have sent in to us. So we're definitely going to get to questions. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So this will definitely be heavy on that. But first, we wanted to talk about why does art matter? And the reason why I wanted to talk about that was because one thing that you mentioned, Samax, in your in last video, and I think when we were talking before that too,
Hmm.
is this whole thing of like people don't know how to sell their comics or their services, their art services, because they don't actually know the value of what it is they
Right,
do.
right,
And
exactly.
I just can't stop thinking about that. Like that's like the thing I've been thinking about all week long. So I wanted to get into what your thoughts are on why art matters, and we'll just kind of riff on that for a little bit.
Sure. Well, so the thing that I think you're referencing is like, and this is something that I've learned regardless. Like, so I do art services as like I work for clients, both individuals and so even doing commissions, is a service. Somebody asks for something, you do it. Um, Drawing, like if you find a writer and they need an artist, y'all collaborate, but you're serving them because they're telling, they're giving you this or that. People might call and say, hey, I need advice, and I give it to them. That's a service. But even if when I just make my own things and I publish them or put them out there, whether it's paintings or art, or comics or posters or whatever I'm doing, and I put it out there, or from your musician for music, and put it out there. That isn't necessarily a service; it's a product, right? But even then, from a marketing perspective, the first question is always, who's it for? Why would they buy it? And when you're getting into like marketing and trying to understand like how to what to say to encourage people to buy your work, or more to the point for people like who are probably listening, why is this for you? Why is this for you and not for you? You know, um, and I would say that even though most artists are intimately into what they're doing and they enjoy it from that perspective, they're very inward facing, so they don't know why a person decides to get it. They're like, because it's dope or whatever, like because they like it, like that. You can't pre you can't search for people that way. Now the thing that's social media has allowed people to kind of put pictures out there and like put stuff out there so that people can encounter it, and then they kind of sort themselves based on I like it or I don't like it. That is probably that's very passive, and it's very largely ineffective. I mean, you're gonna spend a lot of energy to find your fans, and if you're trying to monetize it, you're really gonna have problems because you don't know where to spend your money at. So the thing, the first thing I think that people really underestimate the value of art, because everybody starts out as an artist, but that's kind of why it's valuable, because it's human nature to express ourselves and to communicate. Scott McCloud, who wrote Understanding Comics and Making Comics and Reinventing Comics, one of the kind of art scholars of our generation, right? He basically, said that anything that's more than what you need it to be is art. So, you cook food because you need it to be cooked, presumably to eat it and to digest it properly. Um, the different seasonings and the different, whatever that your mom puts on it, to make it, or your dad, whoever cooks you, um, the different personalities that people put into it, the different cultures that people put into it, that's art. You know, we need to get a certain amount of exercise to function. But dancing is art, Um, you need to have a conversation, but trying to entertain each other, that's art. You know what I mean? So, um, so depending on how broad your definition is, and I like that broad definition, because I went to art school and it gave me a taste of elitism, and I didn't like it. So I always kind of remember that, why art is important broadly is because we all are artists. How well we can make art kind of separates where we're at. So as a person who devotes their life to art, presumably people that call themselves artists, have that kind of audacity or whatever to call themselves artists, they're devoting their life to their art to some degree or other. And so the responsibility with that is to kind of take a leadership role among other people, where art is concerned. So it's important for communication. It's important for sanity. It's important for expressing, our emotions like all across the spectrum. Um, yeah, it's excellent for expressing, rage and indignation, but also compassion and, encouraging connectedness. It's one of the languages that allows people to bridge cultures when they don't speak the same language.
Yeah, it's interesting. what I'm hearing in a lot of what you're saying is, it's almost like this is how humans relate,
Hmm.
basically through
Right,
art. Like, if
right,
you are human, this is part of a big part of being human. And it's funny because you kind of separated the practicality side
hmm,
of anything from kind of, I don't know how to, maybe the expressive side of it or something like that.
right,
And it was making me think of like science, because if there's anything
right.
that maybe kind of would maybe almost be a little bit of an opposite to art, it almost would be science, because that's very focused on analyzing things and coming up with experiments, and it's more of a practical uh, tradition, I guess, or
Hmm,
um, practice. But if you think about it, the
hmm.
scientists who some of the scientists that we know the most, like you think about like Einstein or
Yes,
something, and it's like
Carl Sagan. Hmm,
he Einstein used art techniques
hmm,
to further his science. You know what I mean? Like his,
hmm,
especially I think of imagination. He talks about how
hmm,
important imagination actually is to the sciences, which
hmm.
is intriguing. There's an art
Well,
to everything.
yeah. So again, like, so that's funny. It's funny because artists generally are scientists. Like their experiment. The language of art and science is the same, um, in a lot of ways. Um, and there's a spectrum, of scientists. So like a biologist and a physicist are scientists, but to a certain degree, like a psychologist is a scientist, right? But it, it's interesting. Like, we think of the way that we would, and even within science, there's art to it. You know what I mean? I think that like what science is like an exploration to find out the truth about things, and
Hmm.
largely, art is often more of a way to express the truth,
Mm.
or to express a truth. You know what I mean? So, um, it's interesting how often art artists are scientists, like are interested in the art. And again, I think there's always a spectrum of kind of art that's fanciful, to art that is practical. And in discussions about comics, I always bring up like cave paintings and those and sh- every kind of thing that uses pictures to explain how to do something because it's faster and because people might not be able to read when they're panicked or whatever. And so anybody can read, three pictures that show them how to get, you know, to operate emergency something, break the glass, and it has a picture of the thing that's right there breaking the glass that's right there, so that even if you're an idiot and you're panicked, you know you can go, oh, let me break this glass. um or use the emergency procedures on the airplane, or you know to boil ramen noodles or whatever. They're it has words and pictures.
Yeah.
um and so, but then on the other hand, there's um our it's all about, it's all expressions of like our humanity. And it's just about like how do you say, because there's a science to things, like artists eventually, who pursue art seriously, a lot of times do wind up dipping into the science of it. Like they're like, okay, the what, I forget what that spiral thing that tells you like where, I forget what it's called,
Yeah,
the
yeah. The Is
something Italian curve or whatever.
and
And it there's a science to that, how compositions work.
right.
We'll talk about like, we like drawing and everything like that, but if you take a drawing class, they're going to tell you like the proportions that your body should be, you know how far your eye level is from the top of your head and stuff like that. You certainly start thinking about people how do people's perceptions work, and how that affects what colors you're going to use. Color theory becomes color science. The more smart and intelligent people get involved, um, there's I think that I think that human beings are categorizing, creatures. So we like make categories and we separate things. And for expediency, we specialize so that further kind of creates the importance of categories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the impulses, once you get inside your specialty, you're gonna then be able to see that the DNA of whatever the difference is between art and science, right, is inside that, just as art. Like, so we're in here, it's just art. The all the arguments that could be made about art versus science are made about the art versus the science when you're inside that art form, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then within art as a whole, then once you get inside of individual art forms, because right, I have a degree in painting, where in my in college, like, they really discouraged us to make paintings that look like comic books or cartoons or that had anything to do with that, because they were like, oh, that's low art, it's not valuable. So I studied, painting as a high art,
Mm-hmm.
and what I found is that when you eliminate all these other art forms that don't count, right? Then you get inside of that, and the same arguments are happening between the two, because it's all about, like, paradigms that are inside our human heads,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So we never get away from that, in my opinion. That's why you can talk about somebody like Einstein or Carl Sagan, all the artists that we know by off the top of our heads. They're all there's a charisma and a creativity to the way that they pursued it and the way that they express the art. You know what I mean? Like, or express the science. Because eventually they had to become storytellers. Because Einstein is so smart, we would never have understood anything he was talking about. Like me and you,
Yeah.
we're smart guys, but we wouldn't know what he was talking about, right?
Right.
He had to be able to break it down
Mm-hmm.
to things that people could understand. And then, and I always say this to people when it comes to anything, if you want people to believe something or to understand something and the culture doesn't understand it, what you should do is go make comics about it and go make movies and cartoons about it, and then within a generation it'll be common knowledge.
Yeah.
um I always so that really fits into the conversation about the importance of art, right? There's these people, maybe you have some of them in your viewing audience, who believe that the earth is flat. Like, they're totally sold on the idea that Einstein got it wrong, and all the science that's built on Einstein is all, full of holes and stuff. And when I watch the arguments happen online of people from both camps, I watch them kind of, like, people who disagree with them don't really understand what their theories are. And I'm not going to say that I totally understand it either, but, like, they don't believe that the earth is like a flat, like a saucer floating through space as we understand it. Like, their concept of space time and how it exists is different. Like, they're like, no, you guys have it totally wrong. The nature of the whole universe is different. And so I'm intrigued by their ideas as a comic book artist, because I like to talk about, like, ideas and, Twilight Zoney kind of way of looking at life or whatever sometimes. And I was like, so one of the things that I was talking about, like, to friends, and, like, friends always get alarmed because they think, they're like, oh God, Max thinks the earth's flat. Um, I was like, I say to them, I always use them as an example, because if I thought the earth was flat and I wanted people to kind of understand my way of thinking, I would never argue with anyone about it. What I would do is I would just make comics, because that's what I have access to, and eventually cartoons. and
Hmm.
then maybe write screenplays and make movies. You know, if we go over like the rest of my life, say right now I became converted to this idea, I would spend the rest of my life making really awesome fiction because it is my position, it's my belief that the only reason that you know who, like, if somebody asked you to, you could explain the theory of a lot about Einstein's theories, right? But it's not because of your education that you got in the fine, New England school that you went to. It's because of Star Trek and Star Wars and a million other movies and cartoons that taught you Einstein, that taught you what a black hole is, that taught you what a, what the space-time continuum is. Like, why would you even know that? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Right.
But the reason why you know it, and you probably have a good understanding of it, is because of, comic books and cartoons and movies and TV shows that have reinforced these ideas for you your whole life. And you will, and when anybody comes and disagrees with what you know, you're like, oh, this is ridiculous. This person's stupid, blah, blah, blah. You know, and the thing is, that's not why you know it. It's not because it's right, or, it is, but, it's not because it's right. And that's one of the things that I find that people don't really get is that if you, is that we're story processing creatures. That's why I love comics, like we're storytelling creatures.
Yeah.
We're story processing creatures, and if we learn how to make stories, we can, because the reason like we believe what we believe is because of stories,
Hmm.
you know. And so like if you want to sell an idea, if you want to sell a product, um, if you want to lead people, you lead them by telling a story. You make a rousing speech, that takes everything they're going through, their suffering, their hopes and dreams, their fears, and then you make a story out of it, you know. And to the extent that you can take the thoughts that they're already having in their mind, the conversations they're already having in their homes, and you tell them a story that puts it all within context, and if you can make them the hero of that story, you know then that's leadership. So we see that's what people do in politics, is what people do, you know, on every level. You know what I mean? That's what they do in your religion. That's what they do when they want you to buy, a soda or whatever. Like there's a story that they include you in. Um, so I'm all over the place. That's an art. You know what I mean? Um, the person who writes the speeches for politicians, or those, sometimes those politicians themselves, often I would probably guess, um, they have a handle on that kind of how to tell the right story. You know, what you see a lot in political arguments is people telling a story. You know, um, and they're the good guy, and the other guy is the kind of person that you have learned to fear. You know, and so if a person who wants to build bridges, they tell a story that includes everybody. They're like, we're all, the human race, Independence Day, the aliens are here, they're the real enemies, those guys are jerks. So we're for the people in your audience that make comics, like we're in the enviable position that usually by the time you have put two panels together, you've already got a grasp of how you tell a story, you know.
Hmm.
And that's going to be important, whether you give up comics and you think it's silly and so you go do something else. Go be a parent. You got to explain why your kid has to do something they don't want to do. You're going to tell them a story real fast.
Yeah.
you know
Spoonful of sugar is a is a big part
right.
of, you know. It's just, I think we could go on with examples about this all day long. There's so
Hmm.
much to talk about in this book. I think you really got to like the core of it, and I think one of the things I'm hearing that makes a lot of sense is, the analytic side of things is great,
Mhm.
but people relate to people and learn things and understand things through art.
Right,
So it's like you have both going on. So there's a kind of a cold practicality, but it's just less effective with humans because we're
right,
all humans and we relate through art. So you need art to actually be more effective with whatever it is you're trying to do. We don't go around reciting to each other instruction manuals. We go around and reciting to each other stories.
right,
Uh, and we have pictures, that help with that. A picture
right.
tells it has 1,000 words or whatever. You
Mhm.
know, so it's almost like so obvious why art is important that we miss it.
That's exactly why we miss it, because it is obvious. And the thing is, it seems, I think that, okay, so every child likes to draw. Every child, before they know how to write, they know how to draw. But when you're a child, you don't, or when you're a little child, you don't know that drawing, that you could do it wrong, and you can't do it wrong. Like that's part of the lesson. But we teach, as they decide that, oh, I'm doing it wrong, oh, well, I'm not doing it well, oh, I'm not good at it, you know what I mean? As it gets closer to the ego, then people abandon um this opportunity to be wrong, this opportunity to be a novice. Like they don't want to be a novice, and so people get away from it. As a result, like, we kind of associate this thinking. Artists hold on to the ability to be wrong, and that's okay. Like, that's a big part, that's a big feature with artists, is because no matter how good your art is, when you look at it, it isn't reality. It isn't what's in your head. Like, one of the things that's hardest for me to make people that are my friends that are not artists understand is how much of what I do is about acceptance. I love my work because I can just accept it for what it is. You know, most artists spend a lot of their time frustrated with how it's less than what they set out to do. You know, um, because in your head, everybody's a genius. You have all these. That's why it's important to get out of your head, because ideas that are not very good sound great when you don't have to compare them with anything. You know, um, but it's also great because you can't learn from something inside your head. Like, you can't see what you lack, because you don't lack anything in your head. You know, but so I think that part of it is we associate art with not being practical. We associate art, and there's certainly like schools of thought that have led to this, that existed before we were born. So, like, but they weren't, like, they didn't go all the way back to the beginning of time. You know, the attachment of art to individual expression and is new, like relatively new. Like, as far as like professional artists, if you go to some cultures even now, like, they don't have their artists don't like it. So whenever they were, unearthing, or they would go to Africa and they would get, the African masks or different things, like, they would be fascinated with it, and they're like, well, who's the artist? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, or you couldn't differentiate one artist style from another because they were learning to be the same.
Yeah.
They were like, anywhere that you diverge from the style of this mask is supposed to be is a failure. So if somebody could tell the difference between this person and that person, it means you did something wrong.
Mm.
So, um because there was some, to them, like, a practical reason for it to be this way. And you can imagine that if they thought, so take it from one culture, but just kind of go back to, the ancients, where art was largely, it was science to them, right? Because they didn't know, or maybe they knew something that we need to know. They're like, okay, we need crops. Let's go in here and we need to paint this painting. if the crops didn't come, they're like, you know, maybe they concluded, look, this is not the way to do it. And then they, over time, they said, okay, it looks like every time I do the painting this way, we get the crops. Every time we do the painting a different way, we don't get the crops. So I'm trying to please the gods, right? So let's please them, you know, and let's do it the right way. So they were probably pursuing it in a totally different way. And I think that inside what we call art, you know, there are people who do it some to that kind of way and some to the other way. But I think that because our popular notion of what an artist is somebody who has separated themselves from society and it's not, you know, and especially this kind of very harmful paradigm of starving artists is like, obviously if the person is struggling, you know, we certainly don't want to, and they can't take care of themselves and they can't do anything, we certainly don't want to think of them as role models that we should follow, you know.
Mm.
um, or if they're out there doing what they're doing and it's just entertainment and it's, you know, just flight of fancy, we don't want to think of it as being some kind of practical science to what they're doing. I read a article, I think it was in the Atlantic, where they talked about like when you look at pop music, there's a group of producers, and these are people that are like produce the records, not necessarily like who's listed, oh, producer, this person made the beat, or you know, whatever, like how we think of in hip hop. But it's like four or five dudes that, you know, if you look at pop music, like they produce all of it at a high level because they go, this is a there's a formula to making a hit record. Like it's this kind of chord, this kind of tone, this is how you relate this to this. And they're liking it, you know, whether it's Rihanna, Beyonce, you know, Travis Tritt, whatever. Like they're, you know, when you get to, I don't know if Travis Tritt would count, but like there's production, and it's like these guys like in some country like the Netherlands or whatever that kind of discovered a formula, you know, that I wouldn't perceive, you know, but that is there. And they, you know, just crank out these hit records for all kind of different artists, you know, and on the level that that the musicians like yourself would perform, like that's a totally, like you're not dealing with that. Like you don't, even if you learned it, you would be like, I'm not doing that because that's not what I'm doing music for, you know. But there's a science there, you know, um, and we can either embrace the science in it or not, you know. But and for them, it's practical. Like, you know, this is just something that we make that makes money, and then we use the money for what we use it for, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like music theory, you know. I mean,
Hmm.
literally music theory, notes and how the rhythms and all that stuff, how it's written out in a sheet of music. I mean, that right there, that's science.
There's nothing more scientific than that.
You can
Hmm.
click, you can punch in all those keys at the right times that do exactly what that thing is, and
Hmm.
it's going to be a song.
Hmm.
Or you could take the essence of that and play it with some soul. That's
Hmm.
like art. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Right, right. Well, and that's the thing. Like, then somebody gets into it and they say, "Well, why do we like it when the person gets off the book?" You know, why do we like that? There's science within that too. That's whenever people talk about use that term "wheels within wheels." That's what I always think about
Mm,
is that we we enjoy. There's a scientific reason somewhere, you know, why we enjoy that variation.
mhm,
So even that art of it is science. It's like you can make a there's such a thing as a random number generator,
right.
right? A computer that generates random numbers. Anybody that knows anything about computers knows that computer cannot do anything at random. They can't. Like it's not that's they can't do that. But how they do random number generator is the algorithm that they use to produce the next number is so complicated that a human being can't predict it. It takes in too many variables, too much, you know, that we can't track it. Like you would have to probably do like a million numbers in a row before you would know what the formula was, you know. That's like when we talk about what's chaos and what's order. Um, chaos is order that is too complicated for me to follow. It's chaos. That's a very um, subjective definition,
Hmm.
and from a scientist perspective, a scientist would argue no, it isn't. Until wait a few years, and then some scientist discovers why this um, supposedly chaotic thing is actually orderly.
Hmm.
You get in traffic and you think you know what chaos is, right? But then somebody who analyzes traffic patterns for a living,
Hmm.
who is a scientist about traffic, while you're an artist. You know what I mean? Like, you're just, I'm gonna get to A and B, and I got my own driving style. I used to be a Domino's driver, so I'm very like, traffic, and I was a courier also, so traffic, and you know thinking about stuff like that. It's like everything that seems like randomness and chaos and stuff are just, they're terms that we use, so it's people have their biases or whatever, and when it comes to the arts or whatever, people have their biases. And the thing about like marketing, because I'm fascinated with marketing, because it's human. It's a person. When you get into marketing with a good teacher, like, they're going to talk to you a lot about psychology. They're
Hmm.
going to talk to you about sociology. They're going to talk to you about behavior, and the way the brain works as a machine. You know, this is what, if you get a bunch of people together, and they're going to talk to you about data. You know, people will say, my girlfriend's she makes jewelry, and like she's very successful jewelry designer. Relative to me, she makes good money, and so she talks to other, but she's always striving, right? So she talks to other, like, she traffics with fashion designers and other people like that, and they'll say, well, this group, this area, because she lives in Seattle, so this area, they don't um they don't do this or they don't do that. People don't buy this, they don't buy that. And the thing always challenges, like, the person saying that, what they're really telling you is that they don't know. And this is if they're being honest. They might be lying to you because they don't want to compete with you, But
Right.
uh what they're telling you is that they don't know, because it's obvious, if you take a step back, that in a town of millions of people, you could sell anything. Somebody will buy it. I mean, it's just, how hard is it to get them to buy? What
Right.
do they, and then, so, and what data are they? So it's possible that it might be an uphill battle that you don't want to do. When you look at, like, how much you would have to pay in your efforts, in time or money, for advertising, or sweat equity for, running around telling each individual person, doing shows, whatever. You know, it it might be that the cost per new customer isn't worth it. In order to, you might have to spend, you know, $1 worth of effort to make, 95 cents.
Hmm.
So it might be just an upside down, effort. It might not be worth it. But you don't ever want to get in the trap of making your decisions based on just someone else's experience, if their experience is too limited to come to conclusions. And people who haven't really tried, so they don't have data. They just have, oh, I tried it once or twice. The art world is full of this. I tried to do this and it didn't work. You
Yeah.
know, I tried it. Oh, no, that doesn't work. Okay, well, how many efforts did you make? How many people said no to you? Because I never heard of you. So you never tried to sell it to me, because I would have bought it. But it's, how much, what are you basing this on? And they don't have any data. They
Yeah.
just have their little hurt feelings. If it's a difference, if Bill Gates, tells me that you can't sell a particular kind of computer, because I know he's wasted millions of dollars trying to sell it to me. to people. Um, and he, and if Apple is selling the computer and Bill Gates and Microsoft can't sell it, then that means that they know something that he doesn't know. So it's better to pay attention to people who have done something and ask them questions than to ask somebody who's failed at it. Unless they failed a lot, then their knowledge could be very useful. But we have a bias towards negativity. So if somebody tells us that something that we're kind of scared to try won't work, we believe it, even if they don't have enough data to make a decision.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think it's a great way to kind of um, move into the questions because some of the things
Hmm.
that are in the questions are more on the practical side of things.
Hmm. Right.
And one thing I just want to clear up real quick before we go, and I think Samax was kind of alluding to this in some ways, is that we've kind of put this kind of we've talked about this kind of relationship between practicality or analytic type of things and art, and we're not. I know I don't think Samax is saying this, and I'm not saying this, that one is better than the other. They both work together. I think what we've talked about actually shows that those two things are absolutely married to each other. You
Right.
can't separate them,
Right.
but and they're both important, but it does help to kind of, for the purpose of discussion, separate it so that we
Hmm.
can understand the value
Right.
of
Right.
art. So,
Even things that are like totally fanciful have emotional are have a practical use from terms of sanity, right? So I can tell you, and I know this is probably true for you, and I would bet that that people who make art, even if they never try and sell it or do anything with it, it has helped them their sanity.
mm,
So when people will say, that's is it a matter of practicality or not? I mean, it's very practical to stay sane in the world. You know what I mean? If you're a if you're working a 9 to 5 job, I remember I was working 9 to 5 jobs. The only reason that I was able to do those jobs as long as I did, I worked for a company that was really evil. In fact, the documentary was made about slavery and how the prison system has to do with slavery. And in this documentary, the logo of the company that I work for is in the documentary. So, in
oh,
case I was watching it, and it was like I was already battling with emotions about working there, and then I'm watching the documentary, and in the middle of the screen, they're putting all these companies that are profiting off of the inmates, and then the company that I worked for, the logo was right in the middle, you
wow.
know. But so I made a lot of art during that time period that was about the battle that I was having as a moral person
Mm,
working at a company that was evil. And I do feel like the company's evil. I mean, there are a lot of nice human people that work there, and they're going through whatever they have to go through to continue to work there. But like one of the things that people do is they become apathetic and they blunt their own ability to feel for anyone else. And like a lot of artists, I am very sensitive to other people, and it was hard. Anyway, just a
yeah,
little thing. So to kind of just reiterate that there's all kinds of practicality.
absolutely. All
Mhm.
right, cool. So I wanted to get to the questions from the last stream,
Mhm.
especially because we weren't able to answer them. So the first question that we got that we didn't get to was from Daniel Liebert, and I just want to say too, like some of these questions I'm not sure exactly what they're getting at. So this is kind of an example, but I think we can kind of pull it out. So Daniel Ebert said, "How to be successful? Successful web comic when your story or drawing style are completely different from the rest of the stuff there." Now I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about, but I think we can pull something out from that.
Right. So one of the things that I often when I'm dealing with like trying to help clients um when I'm trying to help clients, and then when I'm thinking about the ways that artists are functioning. So one of the problems that so there's like webcomic sites, and he's kind of seems to be speaking to the fact that he may have a comic that's on a site, Tapastic or whatever. I don't even know them that much because I don't look at them. I look at them because somebody reaches out to me and says, "Here, look at my comic." So so I'm kind of cheating. I'm telling the answer. So the answer is that you should target people, target fans who like a particular kind of style. Um, I think that people really sleep on subject matter as a way. Are we? Oh Lord, am I still here?
Yeah, you're still here.
Okay,
I
hold on
don't
a
see
second. I got something on my screen and I don't want it. So, okay. Yeah, I'm already in a call. Thank you for that.
it.
Oh Lord, Hangouts don't want to show me the
we,
live.
we can hear you, so if
Okay, well, I'll
ever
just look at the little hole or whatever, and I just won't see you anymore. Um, and that's okay. Um, maybe if I hit this, I'm just scared I'm gonna hang up.
right.
It just doesn't want. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So the thing that I would say is important there is that people don't count on the platform to provide uh, their fans to them.
Hmm.
I don't. I think that people get on those kind of sites because it's easy, it's expedient.
Hmm.
Um, okay, it's like if I want to sell my art, if I want to do whatever, whatever. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, this is weird. So anyway, so to the person, it was a Daniel. What you should do is you should think about your fans, like where are the fans that you want at. So if your style, for example, of drawing, because maybe you think your drawing style is weird, what other comic strips are similar to that? Go to those places and locate those fans and send them messages and say, hey, since you like such and such, maybe you should check out my comic. It's here. People don't like that, but do it anyway. Because what are they gonna do? You know? um, because if they're interested, then they'll do it anyway, even if they didn't like that as a tactic. Um,
Hmm.
or you can, get on, the kind of the interwebs and use either, some kind of ads or to say, okay, I make this comic strip, and if you like such and such, and use that as a keyword. So, like, let's say you draw like Jim Mahfood,
Hmm.
you can target Jim Mahfood's fans. You
Yeah.
could say, if you like Jim Mahfood, I draw kind of like that. Here's my comic. Show a picture. If it looks awesome, people are gonna go look at it. And awesome is subjective, so don't assume it's not awesome. Just try and show it to people. The more
Yeah.
people that you can show your stuff to, the better. Now, one of the things that's going to happen, because that platform was designed for the platform, not for you, is that other people are going to also appeal to your fans because you're on there, you know, and that's okay, but you just need to be aware of it. When you're on a platform that's all artists, your value as an individual artist, as it's perceived by anybody on there, goes down. And being on there is making you reduce your own value of your work. That's inherent in the question. Um, build your because what you could do is you could just build a web comic platform for yourself. Get WordPress or whatever. There used to be a comic press or something like that was actually built specifically for that. Build your own website. Build your own thing, and then run ads on Facebook or on even on the webcomic platform you're talking about. Take those fans over to your site.
Hmm.
Even better, get an email list, you know, of everybody that if they like your stuff, say, hey, here, join my email list. Then you have over time you can build a list of 1,000 or 10,000 people, 1,000, 100, however many you get, people who like your stuff, and then every time you post a new one or every time you do anything, you can send them an email and say, hey, interact with my content.
Hmm.
Um, develop personal relationships with your fans so that they want to help you more than they want to just um more than they want to find someone else. You know what I mean? Like, don't just give up. Um, don't give up. You know, don't allow this presumption that you are not valuable. There's a thing that happens called commoditization. Commodities, if you watch Trading Places, is any kind of consumable that is just a whole bunch of it the same. Orange juice, even gold is a commodity. Like, if you go get gold, you don't care where the gold come from, right? Most part. If you're buying, if you go to Walmart and you want, you know, chicken soup, you know, there's gonna be a wide range of chicken soups there. And if the advertising has not convinced you that one brand name is better than another, which they spend a lot of money to try and convince you of that, um, you're just gonna pick the cheapest one. But if you desperately need something, or if you like something, you're like, man, this is my favorite thing, and they don't have it at the store, or you get an email that says, hey, a new, kind of candle, we got a new Campbell soup out. That's not available to everybody yet in the store. It's here, and you're a junkie for soup. You're gonna buy the soup through the link. You're gonna get it sent to you in 2 to 3 business days or whatever. So you're making a digital product, which the funny thing is when you meet people who market stuff for a living, you know what thing they say the most? They're like, man, I wish I had a product. Like, I wish I had a product because I know how to market stuff to people. I wish I had a product, man. And that's why, like I said in the last interview, when artists go to the business world, they're like in awe of what we can do. So where you're looking at it like, well, my stuff is different from everybody else, and people who like web comics don't like what I do. That's inherent in the question. Well, dude, uh, if your stuff is unique, that's a benefit. That is never a problem. It's never a problem to be unique. The thing is it relevant to people? And it's your job if you don't so you don't make comics for everybody that's on that site. You make comics for a specific kind of person. The problem is you don't know who that person is or what the characteristics of that person is. So what you need to do is use the empathy that you probably have a lot of to make your art to think about who consumes this, who would benefit from this, what do they think about other things in life. That'll tell you where they're at. That'll tell you how to reach them. You know, so presumably you're on Facebook, so you can find what groups are these people. So when people make comics, one of the things that, or like when you're talking about comics, one of the things that's weird, and this goes to what I was talking about before, is I say, what's your comic about? And your comic is always about something other than just it being a comic. But when people try and market a comic, they market it as a comic. Like, where are all the people who read comics so I can show them my comic? You know, Glyph is about graffiti and hip hop and probably other kinds of things underneath it. Corncob Rob is about skateboarding, about punk rock culture, about other things that's underneath it, like whatever the story's about,
Right.
whatever the ideas are about. I work on a book called Biggs. It's largely about climate change and the pharmaceutical industry and our angst and worries about those things,
Mm.
right? But the if you ask people what it's about, oh, it's about these giant people, like, okay, so well, anybody that has liked giant comics with giant people will like this. Well, the funny thing is, if you target them based on it being about giant people, they're more likely to compare it to the giant people stories they read before, and probably unfavorably because that other thing has home court advantage.
Mm.
So what you want to do is,
That
and
kind
I told this guy that. So I'm like, so you need to target people who care about the environment and who are worried about climate change and worried about, healthcare and big pharma and stuff. Like, you need to target people that are gonna that when you put this fiction in front of them and it's speaking their language, it's I'm worried about climate change. It's a story where, like, if there's an earthquake in California and it falls into the ocean, that's been done a bunch of times in fiction, and it's compelling every single time because that's something that Americans, the shape of America is an icon that means something to every American, and a natural disaster that changes that shape, that hits us in the heart, man. Like, we're paying attention now, and so, you need to think about, like, the how do people work who your story would resonate with.
Right.
Now, as I'm doing this, like, the thing that's fun about the interview that we did last week is that I felt like people were excited by, thinking of this way, even though it's probably not how they think, you know. Um, but a lot of people eyes glaze over and they just fall back on, oh, I just want to make my comic. I don't want to think about all that. Okay. Well, whenever somebody asks you why you don't make any money, you know how to take the blame for that. Like, you don't want to think. I don't want to think is never a defense. It's a, you know, it's a symptom,
Right.
But anyway, I so that's what I would say is think about what your to the question, think about what is your comic really about? And there's a lot of answers to that. Like, to you, it's about your style. So you might group your, try and target people who like that style. Don't worry about the people who might not like it
Mm,
because you don't know what they like. Because I like Jim Mahfood. I also like Jim Lee. I also like, Doug Mank. I also like, you know, Jaime Rodriguez. You know what I mean? Like, I like a lot of different people. And so people that are targeting me based on one thing about me are probably not reaching me sometimes, or they're excluding me because I like something that's different from what they're promoting. Well, that's not working either. But if they are targeting me based on things that I do like, that they think, there's a commonality, they're likely to get me. And that's why ghetto manga worked for me. You know, that's why it works for me, because me and Marsh became friends actually because um there was a rapper that I really really like, and that I had, a very kind of personal experience with, and I wrote about his music, and I was, I had I write about comics and stuff like that, and Marshall has a relationship with that guy. So from a very early in our interactions, that made a strong connection between me and Marshall, you know. And that's one of those things that doesn't break, you know, because a connection was formed. So if you are, the thing about your comic is it's very likely that it has the ingredients to really touch and grip someone, but
mm,
not everyone. So you need to get an understanding of who's going to want to consume this. And just saying, well, I make it just for myself. Okay, that's a start, but uh, that's a start because a lot of people are like you, but there's actually going to be people that's probably a better customer for your work than you are. And I mean, you're talking about web comics. Web comics are free. I could go into a whole thing about, why are you giving it away, instead of trying to capture the people? Because again, when you're putting it on a platform, you don't know the people who are looking at it. You don't own them. As soon as the platform diverts them off to something else, then they're gone. But that's a whole other thing. There's a business model there for you that can work, but it needs to be informed, and not just because that might be the easiest, what you perceive as the easiest thing, and then you get on there and it's not easy. Um, that doesn't mean it's the wrong choice, but you just need to be intentional about targeting people, because the platform will get you some page views probably, but it might not. And whether you're talking about Patreon or some kind of web platform or Facebook or whatever, like, you need to have a strategy for targeting the people that you want to see your stuff. When you start doing that, that's going to be very powerful for you. But
Yeah.
it starts with understanding what is the point of your comic, you know, and what's the personality that you think um you're projecting, that, and what's the appeal of it. Then who would that work for? Where are they at? How can I find them and put my stuff in front of them, and how can I get them on a list? And then we talked about this before. Email is, I'm always hammering email, email, email. But I mean, phone numbers are good. Um, Even like now, if you have social media accounts, um, sending stuff through Messenger is a thing now. I haven't really gotten into that too much, but they have things called messenger bots that they use. That's similar to having an email list where you can kind of split the difference between email style marketing and social media.
Yeah.
I
Cool.
hope there's enough there for you to roll with, Daniel. Um, because that's a good question, and
Yeah.
you just got to get a little bit more proactive in targeting people, and the all the people that are on that platform who prefer something else other than what you do are not your concern. Most of them aren't going to see you anyway.
Hmm. I think that's a lot of good points, a lot of good stuff to chew on. So Van Illustrations asks, what's the first step you'd take with your personal project, with the work that's more of a leap, where the personal value is more important to you? Which is kind of similar to the other question.
Yeah, I think so there's a guy, I think his website is chriswilsonstudio.com, that he's an artist. He went to Cal Arts. He works in animation and stuff like that, but he has very good courses that you can buy that are about marketing for artists. Um and he has an email thing that's free. If you go to Starving Art, my site, starvingartsanonymous.com, I think the first post that's up there, you know what? Take that back. I don't think I published the one that was about his thing. Anyway, he has if you go to, I want to say it's chriswilsonstudio.com. Marsh, after this, I know you're probably going to put a link there.
Yeah.
And I recommend that you do, even though it's not mine and I don't get anything from it, but I think this would be useful. Check that link and it'll be obvious. He has, at the top, he has courses or something like trainings or something like that is one of the links at the top. And then he has a free for illustration, I think, but there's a free 12, it's about art launches, I think, the one that's a free email series about art launches. And I mean, even if it's not exactly what you need, generally those kind of courses will have so much information for people just starting that you can live off of it for a long time before you realize, oh, this probably isn't exactly what I needed, but I learned a lot of things that will help me going forward. Um, but
Well, I
so
mean,
directly to the question, you want to do the same thing. You want to think about can be who would really like this. Who would this appeal to? If you've ever sold or gotten good feedback from anybody, if you got two or three people that you've gotten feedback from or that have bought your product, okay, look at those people. What do they have in common? Try and break them down. You know, demographically, yeah, that's kind of useful, but really it's more about like their personality. What motivated them to want to like what your work is. And you can ask people questions, but a lot of times you're going to have to interpret whatever you find, whatever they say. So I would, the first step is just trying to think about, like, how do people benefit from this? Like, what will they like about it? What do they like about it? The people that like it. And then once you can kind of make a profile of an ideal customer, and that might be a kind of a jump from the question. Then you start targeting, where do those people hang out, and like that. Um, But so a first step sometimes is just to kind of step out and show your stuff to people because you don't know. It's I sound like I'm judgmental about people not knowing, but it's fine to not know like who would like it and what and why. But once you have a few customers, go back and and interact with those customers. That's what social media is very useful for, is going back and having interactions. Putting when you have an email list, it's like you can actually send people, send surveys out and say, hey man, can y'all answer these questions? You know, talk to your fans and people. The thing about fans is that they love to be talked to. We're in an era where everybody's got a story where they tried to say something nice to their favorite artist, and that person didn't care about them and it hurt them, and now they're ambivalent about whether they like that artist anymore. So it's like when you're small, you have the benefit that you care about your fans as much as they care about you. You know what I mean? Because you're like, wow, this person bought my work, or this person didn't buy it, but they said something nice to me. So use that and just interact with whoever's out there. um your mom or your cousins might not be valuable because they just love you as a person, right? But once you get it out into the internet or into the world, like if you do shows or anything like with Art Collective, um, then you have people out there. Then be a scientist. Ask them questions. Make a note of what they say. Read between the lines. Most artists are very perceptive anyway. That's why you learn to perceive, to kind of interpret people. That's so when you draw somebody leaning on their hand, you've thought about what does that look like and why, and how does the weight work, and then you start thinking about what's in the person's mind. He's tired because he had a long day at work. So you do that with people that you make up or whatever. You can do that with your fans or just your potential fans.
Absolutely. All right. So I have a series of questions from Jan that he gave me.
Okay.
Yanamo, he's got his own channel. But before I get to that, I do want to go into one of the questions because all of Jan's questions are very related to each other, but this
Mm-hmm.
one's very different from the chat. And this is Mutt Man, and he's a friend of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, can Samax give his opinion on how to make about spirituality and faith more appealing to a mass audience?
Say that. Read that question to me again.
And I'll just let you know he is a Christian. I
Mm-hmm.
just happen to know
Mm-hmm.
that. But he says, can Samax give his opinion on how to make stories about spirituality and faith more appealing to a mass audience?
Well, I could tell you because I do this. I do it myself. So people who have been reading my comics for a long time might be like, "Really, you do?" And that's the thing that's important. Your number one job is to be dope.
I like
If
that.
you're not dope, you can't. Your message will never appeal to anybody except for people who already agree with you. And then it doesn't really appeal to them. They just love the message, and that might be cool to you. Um, one of the places I learned this from is Christian rap, which you might be, you're friends with Marsh, so you might be familiar with Christian rappers too. A lot of them are terrible, you know, a lot of them are like really terrible, and that's the reason why they're not effective. And they're like, oh, people don't like the gospel, and it's like they're rejecting me because of Christ. No, they're rejecting you because you're terrible. But go forth. You know what I mean? God, loves you anyway. But um, so there's I think it's I think it was either Journey or Theory from LPG, Tunnel Rats, and he said, "We believe in the purity of being ill." Which for hip hopper means just what I said. Like your first job is to be dope. Now they would go. Now there's different kinds of Christian rappers, so bear with me, everybody who's not Christian. I'm gonna get into the weeds on this.
Actually, one
Again, hip hop is my jam, so.
to interject 1 second, it's funny that you say that because I'm thinking of another artist who isn't a Christian, but has a lot of things he likes to convey, and that's
Hmm.
like that are messages, straight up messages, and that's
Right.
KRS-One. And
Yeah.
one of the main things he has said that has always sticks in my head is being dope live is like being insured for life. Like
Right.
it's right there.
Right.
You gotta be dope. Like you said, you gotta be awesome at
If you're
whatever.
not dope, you need that needs to be your first. So if you have a mission, the reason people make decisions based on their emotions and then they justify those decisions with logic.
Mm,
Everybody that, people think they're so logical, and they're not. You know what I mean? And that's not a knock on them because I'm one of them, you know. Um Maya Angelou, I might have said this last time because this is so important. Maya Angelou said, um, people will forget what you said and they'll forget what you did, but they won't forget how you made them feel.
mm,
And so you have a mission. You believe in the message that you're trying to deliver to people and that it has the power to save their life, right? You need to make sure that they eat it. You need to make sure that they take it. It's like I said before with the flat earthers. Arguing with people is never going to convince anybody that the earth is flat, or that the science, all their mathematics and stuff that they think justifies what they're talking about. They're never going to convert people that way. Everybody that got converted to it is because of some kind of reason, that emotional reason. So they need to be better storytellers,
mhm,
and I think they need to be better at fiction.
mm,
There's a great quote I heard, and I'm upset with myself that I can't remember who said it. Is fiction is truth that is more truth per square inch. You know what I mean? Like they take, because real life, it's all over the place. Fiction takes the truth and squeezes it down. You know what I mean? Like to deliver it to you in like medicinal. You know what I mean? Or weaponized. Like it's like I'm gonna take this and make it into a form and give it to you,
mm,
so it'll have an effect. Whereas if you like just any kind of drugs or whatever comes from plants and stuff, you eat the plant, you eat enough of it, you would get the drug effect. They remove everything out of the plant that makes the effect and just give you that with a filler, you know, so that they know you got the same amount that the last person got and that it goes straight to wherever it's supposed to go to have the effect. So that's a roundabout way of saying that. So we believe in the purity of being ill. Like you have to get people to take your message, and people don't necessarily want to be preached to. They don't want to be told, all the time. Now people don't have no aversion to being preached to. You know what I mean? But they want to enjoy it. You
mm.
know, and so you should. You're an artist. Like you are cheating. Like a person who is just trying to teach it to them doesn't have the advantage that you have to make it look cool.
Right.
Now you have to have an endurance level for religious people. I mean, I used to make comics that were very kind of Christiany, and I still think the stuff that I made was dope. That was my pursuit, but I didn't try and give it to people in the church because they pick it apart and they want to talk about all the things that caused there to be like denominations started happening right on my you know in my face, like while I'm at a table like selling my little wares, and they're like want to argue with me about stuff because I'm not a scholar, dude. Like I just make comics, right? And it's like I just want it to be fun and awesome, and they wanted to argue about it. And if they saw it somewhere, they would really appreciate it because of the content. But if it was a movie, if it was a TV show, like they would just consume it. If they saw it in their comic shop or convenience store, they would buy it for their children. But because I'm there, they want to argue with me about the details because they want to control the way that I communicate
Mm,
what the truth, the way that God has showed it to me, because that's a feature of modern religious people, of religious people. Period. Jesus spent the whole Bible arguing with the whole New Testament arguing with the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and he was turned over to the people who killed him by his one of his own disciples. So there you go. But so the thing is, you're making it for people who have no reason to want to sit through your message. They don't care about your message, and that's okay. You know, if your stuff is dope, and Marshall can attest to this, because I know he's probably had this experience. I know he has because I think he seeks this experience. If your work appeals to people because it's appealing, then they will tolerate your message.
mm,
And spoiler alert, you will have an effect on them. Now, what effect you have is not up to you.
mm.
So let's all be Christians right now for a second, if you suffer me. Everybody else, go get a soda or something. Um, it's not your job to save people. As evangelism is not about going out and saving everybody with the gospel, like hitting them over the head with it and making them do anything. The manipulating people by force, give it up. It
Mm.
is not what you is called to. What you're
Constantine
called to
it didn't
is
work
to
out too
teach.
well.
Hmm? Right. It's
Constantine
your
wasn't really a very positive experience for some people.
well, at the end of the day, people don't like it. Some people, I'm sure it helped. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing. Like even for somebody like that, the real effect of whether somebody embraces God, because that's what this is about, right? It's not about how many people we add to our ranks. That's what religion does. Is
Mm,
it's a machine and it wants to be fed, right? And we're the raw materials that makes a religion happy. It's how many how many people is sitting in the pews? How much money are we collecting?
mm,
How much of that? God tolerates that. That's not what God wants. That's what God tolerates because God is patient with humans, right? What God wants is for relationships with people, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, one plants, one waters, God gives the increase. It
mhm,
is not up to you what effect your work has. It's up to you if you're doing what your purpose is. And so like when you feel like your purpose is to advance the gospel or however you say it, um, then that's good. What you need to get granular about what your job is. And if you're doing it with comics, unless so a lot of people who call themselves evangelists, they're not evangelizing, right? Christian rappers, a lot of them, not even most of them, I don't know, but a lot of them, they're not, there's different roles that people are taking, and that's fine. A lot of them are just there to entertain other Christians. That's what they're there for.
mhm,
And then, when you get down to it, they might be, Pentecostal, so they only want to entertain other Pentecostals. They might be Baptist, so they only want to entertain other Baptists. They might be whatever Catholic, they only want to entertain other Catholic people. That's fine. It's one thing, you know what I mean? But if so you need to get granular about what it is that God wants you to do. I guess I could sit here and say that everybody should be doing the same thing with as far as what the Great Commission is and all that stuff. But, you know, I'm very I have a very personal religion that could easily be classified as Christian or could also easily be classified as not Christian because I reject things that I reject because of my relationship with God is personal,
mm,
and ultimately I think that's what God wants. But, you need to get granular. You need to get with God and understand what is his mission for you and for your work. If you're living your life in such a way that it's about the mission that God has gave you, you'll be fine. The delivery method you know, God is the leader. You know what I mean? So you'll be good. So to the extent that you ask me, what I think you should do is focus on being dope so that people cannot do it excellent. Do it as if God said, I want you to make the best comic you can make. And in what you're doing, acknowledge me and I'll make your path straight.
Hmm.
You know, include me in what you're doing. Let me do what I do in what you're doing. Do what you do in what you're doing really well.
Yeah.
You know, so you want to make something that's dope. Now, if your thing is indie comics that are weird and off the beaten path, and it's very like a personal style or whatever, then honor that. If you feel God calling you to make a comic that looks like it's made by Jim Lee or Mike Mignola or you know Phil Hester, follow whatever leading that you are getting for your work. All paths are legitimate, but within the context of what you're trying to do, being dope is the number one thing, you know, um, because make it so that so sometimes that's going to lead you away from the approval of other Christians, frankly, and sometimes that's going to lead you into into the approval of people who you kind of might feel weird about being approved by. But that's why it's important to have a relationship with God that's legitimate, because you're gotta use your instincts, so you'll be like, nah, I ain't doing that. Yeah, I'm doing this. The way that I talk, the way that I do everything, um it wasn't built in church anywhere. you know um there was a strip or a thing that I did on the a comic strip that I did based on one of my email subscribers who's a J Classified. He's a Christian rapper, and he said something about sheep in wolves clothing, and I made a strip that was about that, and a comic strip that was about that. And so like that's one of the things we had a back and forth email conversation about it as a result. And it's like people are gonna make judgments no matter what. So it's like you have to be committed to walk in your walk. Um, but anyway, so the number one thing is to be dope. I don't even remember what the details of the question were. I hope I covered everything in the question. But
Yeah.
that's the number one thing. Be dope and just make sure that it includes messages. But sometimes your message is gonna be subtext. It's not gonna be. And you know what? Sometimes people are gonna misinterpret, and that's fine. I did paintings when I was at the height of my painting, popularity with my paintings in the I guess in the late 90s or early 2000s. I did a series of paintings that was reinterpreting uh stuff from the Bible, like stories and characters from the Bible, in particular Jesus, Samson, John the Baptist, in contemporary kind of hip hop terms or whatever. And often the conclusion that critics came to was that I was criticizing Christianity,
Hmm.
or like I was saying that it was, something negative about Christianity. Um, and some of those writers were Christian, and most of them were like people who were agnostic or atheists. But in both cases, when they misinterpreted my intentions, I think it was largely because of their hangups, and I can't do anything about that. If they don't come to me and ask me, and at that time I wasn't really projecting meaning a lot because that wasn't important to me. My pieces had text on them, and so they had text on them, and they had pictures, obviously, and so people would see the word. When you see the word Jesus, you immediately start interpreting. So people misinterpreted a lot of what I did, and that was okay with me. Like I found it to be a pleasant experience to be misinterpreted. For a lot of artists, that like, oh, they're like, oh, especially Christian people. Like they would think that that's a failure. Um, I tend to have a very loose is a word that's gonna bring up the wrong connotations, but it is a loose interpretation or a loose connotation for like the Great Commission and stuff like that. Go and make disciples, and we think of disciples as being that's a very loaded word for us, but disciple just means student. You know, um, go and make people study. Make them, and people will come to their own conclusions because God made us with the ability to do that. And if you think you're going to overcome their whole life, probably not. But
Well, I mean,
you can. You follow your part of it. You are not going to be the only reason that somebody makes a decision that
yeah.
you want them to make. God is going to participate. He's going to use you. He's going to use somebody like me. He's going to use somebody like Marshall. He's going to use that person's mom and grandma, their children. A lot's going to go into it, and that's why we should always remember that God is going to initially, ultimately get the glory for those kinds of decisions,
Mm.
not us. I'm very comfortable with that. Like I'm very comfortable with my place, you know, because I've the better that I am at being a, a Christian is how much I can disengage my ego from that.
Yeah.
So as an artist, it's a lot of ego a lot of times in doing art, and a lot of the pain that comes with being an artist is about, your ego being where it doesn't belong.
Mm.
So ego has a job with being creative is an ego centric thing, like I'm going to express myself. That's a difference. We don't want to just always be a cog in a machine, right? Which you are, and that's good. It's a good thing, you know, it helps keep you working because the other parts of the machine work on you too. However, our ego leads us to be artists. That's not, God didn't make a mistake in doing that. And you become an artist and you make your art. And sometimes you have to then back off. Your job, the reason for your ego to be there is to make it dope. So that's where your ego is not going to go wrong. Other than it might make you feel like it's not as dope as it needs to be when it's perfectly fine. But that's another thing. So just be dope. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he'll direct your path. Right. So all the kind of debate that can happen within there is whatever. You're still going to have to make your own decision. Um, but just just make sure your work is dope. Honor God by making the dopest thing you can make. Make the characters real so that people can relate to them instead of a lot of times we try and prop up and or I say for me, when I was making like super Christian, stuff or whatever, um, I love the characters. Other Christian people love the characters, maybe like them, or at least they said they did because they were being Christian, polite Christians, right? But no one in the whole world could relate to them who actually needed to hear the stories and make decisions, So one of the things that happened is I started to darken the characters by bringing them away from this kind of perfect Christian profile and
Mm.
bringing in the mistakes, bringing in the mental problems, bringing in the emotional problems, bringing in the baggage.
Mm.
And the power of the characters had to do with whatever could happen through them. Their powers had spiritual, connotations to them. So whatever could happen through them. I had a character who was a homeless man who, when he had these powers, he was kind of like the Wolverine character of the team who was a little bit more violent than he should be and a little bit more, you know, dangerous than he should be. And everybody was always worried that he was going to hurt someone that he shouldn't. And it was like people reacted to that. They were like, oh no, that's not a good message or whatever. But people who were not Christians who would read the book, like they're like, man, this character's awesome. And then they would be like, and they would tell me something that they learned, and maybe they were like patronizing me, but they were telling me something they learned from the way that the character was flawed, you know. And so if I had chosen to like build my career on something like that, and I have a lot of those kinds of ideas that I want to get out, if I can live long enough. Um the power in it is going to be in a person whose life is totally messed up, who can see themselves in that character and see that maybe they can get out of where they're at,
Mm,
or how God could accept them even though they're way off of the beaten path. You know, when I used to be in ministry, I ministered to people that I could not bring to church because
mm.
my church was too judgmental. They judged me all the time. Like I know they couldn't handle these people, you know. And so, my mission was bigger than church. Anyway, we could do the Christian artist podcast or whatever and really build and destroy on this. But I hope I answered the question good and everything.
Yeah, man. I think you definitely touched on some really good things with that. And I could sit here and I could do show upon show just about that stuff. So um,
Right.
let's get into Jan's questions.
Yes.
He had let's see, he's got 5 questions here. There's actually
Okay.
6. There's kind of another one at the end. But the first one is does the 9 to 5 job in art still exist anywhere, or is everyone a freelancer moving from gig to gig?
The answer to the question is yes. Obviously. So one of the things that we forget is that there's companies that employ artists.
Hmm.
Um, Disney, Marvel Comics, there's buildings like I worked at a e-learning company, and so that's a very important question because there are definitely the competition for those is very fierce. So you need to learn how to market anyway, if you want those, because when you see a job posting anywhere, and you mostly won't see job postings for them because they don't do that, all the time. But um, when you see a job posting, for every posting, there's probably going to be 1,000 people that apply for that job because artists want to work
Hmm.
and they don't want to be marketers and they don't want to be business owners. Um, and that includes me. Like I had, I was putting out stuff. Actually, I was putting out a lot of stuff. The way that I wound up being a freelancer, and then the way that I got a job in the art field was by being a freelancer. That's how they discovered me. A lot of times, you're going to get hired for a job as a temp, through some kind of an agency. So, what is Creative Circle? That's probably an agency. That's a good example of an agency that's all, creative jobs, and it's a lot of graphic design and stuff like that. But they definitely hire, but they do it. You're basically freelancing anyway when you go through those places. Now, what'll happen is if you work for a company and they really like you, they might offer you a full-time position. So I think that's the model that most companies use, or a lot of companies use. I worked for a greeting card company, so I mean, I never worked for Hallmark, but Hallmark has a headquarters or whatever. They might have on staff illustrators or cartoonists or whatever. Like I don't know. But I see every now and then I think their corporate headquarters is in Kansas City. Um those kinds of companies that are largely creative companies are few and far between. They tend to buy each other, so they become bigger and bigger, and that means they're located in one place. But also, um, almost every company you ever worked at probably has one or two, big company anyway, has a few creative people that are on staff. Again, they're not the bulk of the people that work there. Obviously, everything that you watch on TV, every television show, every movie has creative people on staff. So I guess it depends on how you're talking about artists, because a writer is an artist, um, a graphic designer is an artist. Um, but if when buildings have a lot of art in them, like museums have artists usually that work there. They're usually the staff is made up of people who are themselves artists. They're not doing art, per se, but they're there, people who they've gotten. Um, they interpret art for people. They, you know, so there's jobs or whatever. The thing is that there's a lot of competition for those jobs, and you need to be ready to fight for them. If you think you're right for it, you're going to need to sell your rightness to whoever makes a decision.
Hmm.
One of the things, and I could tell you as a person, me myself, I think it's way easier to be a to run an art business than to get and keep an art job. Um, so I think even people that have an art job probably should be pursuing their own business, for reasons or whatever that I can get into, but that weren't the question. There's jobs out there. Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good evaluation of it.
You need to be willing to move sometimes because they might not be where you live.
That's a good point. The second question is, if you are a one-man company, what is your life slash work balance like, and what are things to avoid?
Okay, so um, you need to protect. If you want to have balance, you need to design that balance. One of the beauties of being when you have your own business is your business is what you want it to be. Like we had a long thing comically about last time is I don't do logos. That's probably the biggest business opportunity in the world, for a person that can draw. I could probably be a good logo artist. Because I know a lot of a lot of artists who do great logos that don't like doing them. They did their own, they did them for their friends or whatever, but then they avoid logo stuff like the plague. Everybody hates logos could be a sitcom about artists. Um, but you're gonna have to create your own balance, right? There's a saying that Seth Godin, who's um a marketing guy, he said recently on his blog, I don't like your work doesn't mean I don't like you.
Hmm.
You need to be able to separate your art from yourself. And when I say yourself, I mean self with the capital S, like your sense of self. Um, you need the oh man, so you are your number one asset when you run a entrepreneur when you're an entrepreneur of any kind. Your mind, your creativity, your um, sanity is your most important asset. Your body,
Mm,
you need to take care of yourself. So there's this hustle, hustle, hustle. So I'm not from the school of thought, and I'm transitioning from the school of thought of hustle, 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 sleep when I'm dead, that kind of thing. um it's attractive because getting things to work is hard, and you ultimately, when you're in a business for yourself, you take 100% responsibility for where you're at. So if things aren't working, just sitting back and saying things aren't working doesn't solve your problem.
mm,
Making excuses is an employee pursuit. Employees can solve their problems with excellent excuses, because you're only ultimately, if you fail and you need to tell you want to keep your income, all you have to do is convince your boss that it's not your fault, and so they take their anger or their problem solving elsewhere. But when you own it, the you know it's not a problem isn't solved until you solve it. And so excuses, get rid of them.
hmm
That's the number one thing. Get rid of excuses. you know um Protect your sleep. So just so I can directly answer the question,
hmm
work life balance. If you have a significant other or whatever, take care of them. If you don't, your business will fail if your wife or girlfriend is not happy, or boyfriend or whatever, however you roll. If they're not happy, you need to get where you take care of that person. If you're a person that's so consumed with your work, then that you can't ever pay attention to anybody else, I would encourage you to not get in relationships until you can, because that's a personality flaw or whatever, in my opinion. You need to handle that, but maybe you need to be by yourself while you put your business together and get it onto a stable ground.
mm,
The fact is that when you run your own business, you should be able to maximize profits in a way that you couldn't if you're an employee, because obviously your boss doesn't hire you to make you well off. They hire you to make themselves well off, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not anti-job. I don't got one. But so you should be able to maximize profit. So you shouldn't you shouldn't have to work as hard, all the time. You just have to be smart about stuff in ways that you can be stupid when someone else is being smart for you. When you have a job, somebody else is doing the marketing, somebody else is doing the HR and the clerical, somebody else is making sure your taxes are getting taken care of, somebody else is doing everything. You're just there to do whatever you're doing, and they already figured that out before you got there. You know, you got to figure it out. You got to study it. That'll make you want to stay up all night. That'll make you want to um, not do anything, other than your business. You'll only want to be friends with other artists or comic book artists. You'll only want to be friends with people with your clients and your customers, and that be your whole life. As a person who has done that, burnt out, lost a marriage, been estranged from people that are indispensable because I couldn't make the just do that right. I recommend that you be ruthless about taking care of your family, whatever form that is right now,
Mm.
and being taken care of by your family,
Mm.
taking care of yourself. Um, I'm not like an activist about health, so I'm not going to give you vegan messages. I'm not going to give you like P90X messages or whatever. I am overweight, and I'm planning on eating bacon today, so it's whatever, but take care of yourself. Don't be completely ignorant of how your body works. It's your number one asset. You know, we it's like the saying, you don't have a soul, you are a soul. You have a body.
Mm.
So your body is the first gift that you got. So take care of it. Your happiness in life, no matter whether you're an artist or anything else, is going to be dictated in part by how well your body works. So take care of your body, take care of your health, take care of your mental health. You know, it's a lot of things you could do. Like I said, I'm not an activist, but drink water, sleep, you know, um, take a day off, you know, every now and then. As far as me, I do get really aggressive about, working. I don't believe in 0 days. So even on my day off, I do at least one thing that advances my business.
Mm.
Um, but you have to balance working in your business and working on your business, so making your business better and then doing the business. So I'm a freelancer. I spend a lot of time working for clients, right? And if it was up to my clients, I would work for them all the time, but I also have to work on my business
Mm.
to make sure that my business is running properly or running better. I got a long way to go. um, but but then I am embracing the concept that I have to take care of myself. I have to take care of my own sanity. you know um I do have to entertain myself. um some some things that I do are not gonna I built my business around who I am a lot, and so it's hard actually for me to do something fun that isn't possibly gonna end up on my blog or isn't possibly gonna be part of a sales process later, you know what I mean? Sales messages or emails or whatever. But I won't decide not to do something because I can't figure out how to use it. That's a lot of negatives to try and say that my happiness is more important than how I can use it, for my business, of what use it is to my business, because my business is here for me. I'm not here for my business,
Mm.
you know. So I think that's important. Um, so just there's a lot of people, um like marketing guys who I like, but who their message is I don't go by. you know if you're going to do everything yourself, you can only do so much. So you have to make choices about what you can do and what is too much.
Yeah.
you know
Cool. I like that. There's good cautionary stuff, and yeah, a lot of good stuff there. Um, so this is the third question from Jan. Last week's social media questions were really interesting. I can't
Hmm.
help but find many of us artists cater to other artists' needs rather than market their wares to consumers.
Hmm.
No
Yeah.
objection, but how to break out of this mindset as an artist when you become your own business? Any thoughts?
Well, as you get more customers, hopefully you sound smart, so some of this is gonna just happen
Mm,
because you're gonna say you're not paying my bills, my customers are paying my bills. So what my customers want, you can't be everything, right? You're not gonna grow into the people you admire the most. That person is gonna become a distinct person. They're still changing. They're gonna become a distinct person, and you're gonna become a distinct person. Your business is gonna become, if you're doing it right, you're going to pursue growth. And so the thing to keep in mind is always ask your customers if you can, ask them what they want. Give your customers what they want, or be informed by what they want. When people say, even somebody like me or Marshall, we might say, well, don't do this because blah, 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 blah. You know, you take everything with a grain of salt. Your business is yours. My girlfriend gets a lot of advice. She's terribly introverted. Not terribly, but like very, very, very introverted. So she couldn't do this. Like she couldn't sit and talk on camera or whatever. Now she talked my ear off, but she don't talk on camera. And people are always telling her that she needs to do more interviews. She's been covered in magazines. She was in Vogue. Her work was in Vogue and stuff like that. So they're like, well, you have to do interviews. You have to do this or that. And it just like talking about herself like that is just something she's not comfortable with, you know. And the thing that I say to her, and I was one, I was like, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? Blah, 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 blah. And then one day I was like, I stopped giving her that kind of advice because, why try and make her, miserable? You know what I mean? The whole point of having a business is it's yours. Like you could do whatever you want to do. If you don't want to do something, you don't have to do it. Now the thing is, there's results that you want, and if you need a result, it's incumbent on you to figure out how to get the result that you want. Now, the thing I could tell you is that a lot of artists don't know what they're doing anyway, or they're responding based on, like I said before, very limited data. So when you're doing things because, okay, so here's a debate in comics, right? Greg Land, tracing, different kind of people that use different kind of techniques or whatever, everybody's getting all up in arms or whatever about different artists. Like in the art world, people so people are generally more motivated. Here's a nugget, right? People are generally more motivated by what they hate than by what they love,
mm,
right? I doubt if anybody buys a product though based on hating something else, So your customers are buying things from you because of what they like or what they need or what they want. These are both emotions, right? Hate and wants are both emotional. What's going to be more important for you as a business owner is what do my customers want? Or so you want to think about what arouses them is what they hate, right? What pain are they experiencing? They're experiencing pain. They're trying to there's something that they don't like and they want to get rid of that don't like. Arguing so what artists do online, what people do online a lot is dogpile onto something they don't like. So let's all like crap on Greg Land or someone else who we think is doing art in a way that we don't approve of. Now, Greg Land's just paying his bills. I don't know why he decides to do something one way or the other. And if I don't, so I don't have the thing about Greg Land that other people do. I ain't never bought a book because I wanted to read a Greg Land book, So I don't really, I think that most people, again, this is an egocentric thing. Like they care a lot about stuff that doesn't matter even to them. Like who cares? Like if somebody's making a comic you don't like, who cares? Like there ain't no reason to get up in arms about it. That's a internet thing. And one of my mentors that had he had a Q&A yesterday where he said something. He said the way that groups work on the internet, you're not like talking to an individual, you're talking to the mob. And mob mentality is that when the negative thing appears, let's all jump on it and dogpile on it. And a lot of we crystallize a lot of opinions that happen in that context into a core opinion of things that we shouldn't be doing. But they're meaningless except in those contexts. Because Greg Lamb doesn't make money drawing comics because that's a bad way to do it. You know, somebody people like it who are not busy dogpiling on it.
Mm,
You know, so if he's paying his bills and stuff, and the stuff that he makes, it's not, you know, if it's not your cup of tea, it's not. But I mean, it's not garbage. You know, it's just not what you want to see. Like
mm,
your aesthetics about how art should be made. Um, Ronald Wimberly said in a when people were coming to him, because as an artist, people come to you to try and get you to dogpile on the people that they don't like a lot.
mm,
That's something that just happens. Um, he when people came to him with that Greg Land, you know, and I said Greg Land's name 20 times or whatever. Some people are going to go Google Greg Land because I said this, and they're actually going to like his work, and so it'll help him. That's why I don't feel bad about doing it. Obviously, the man's getting paid, but Ron Wimberly, who's one of my favorite artists, he said, first of all, he said the thing I just said. He's like, that man needs to pay his bills. So I don't have nothing to say about that. But to the extent that if I don't like another artist's work, my response is to make better work
mm,
or to make work the right way. So what you should be doing if you're an artist is letting your art be the response to the art you don't like.
mhm,
I'm gonna tell you, and this is one of the poisons of social media. And I am not as anti social media as I seem, but one of the things that it's designed to make you feel a certain way while not getting you to behave in a way that's good for you.
mm,
Responding to stuff on social media feels creative
mm,
because the way that your mind works, leaving comments, criticizing, hunting down a meme, you know, posting a GIF or whatever, like searching, it feels creative because it triggers, man, the people who design this stuff, they get together real smart people to design it. It's science, you know. Um, there's a book called Trust Me, I'm Lying. I don't know the name of the author, but he used to work at Facebook. Um, I think. But so it's designed so that you feel like you're being creative. If you step back from it, you can see that it's not creative to dogpile on Facebook. And a lot of artists who can't meet their deadlines spend a lot of time doing it.
mm,
And then they're like, well, I don't understand why, you know, like people will say, how do you get people to believe that you can make an engaging comic strip out of their little whatever? I'm like, well, one thing you could do, how long does it take you to draw a comic strip panel? Like, probably not that long. One thing you could do is read their content, pull something out of their content, and make a one panel thing, share it, you know, link to their original post. Don't even tell them. People who are business owners be like trying to figure out where the traffic is coming from. Do a series on your blog, make a blog, right? And then do a daily series about a subject matter that your favorite business that you want to work with is talking about on their social media or on their blogs or whatever. And then draw a one panel comic strip, you know, or something real easy for you is what I'm saying. And then write a little thing, 500 words, whatever, and link back to their stuff and just do that. Make that a thing you do every day instead of wasting your time like arguing with people about stuff that doesn't matter, about stuff that you don't even really care about, let's be honest, and then doesn't matter. you know. Or if you're gonna complain, instead of typing up a post, make it into a comic strip. Do something that might actually benefit you and show people that what you can do.
That's a good point.
You know, instead of complaining about Trump or complaining about whoever's on the other side that you don't like if you're a conservative, instead of that, why don't you make a comic strip complaining about them?
Yeah.
You'll get famous. Right now, if you make comic strips about Donald Trump or whatever, you'll get famous.
Yeah.
I posted one whenever he got Stormy Daniels, who's like he had an affair with the porn star and all that came out, and I made like a little comic strip thing just in my daily sketches. Like that's what I do, daily sketch, and I share them in email. At that time I was really doing it daily. I'm trying to get back to it now. And I mean it people like were all in my face, and this was not even something. I think I shared it on Instagram. Like it was so bad. Like people were cropping my signature out and just reposting it without my signature. You know what I mean? Like because that's how it had like a little viral. Whatever. It wasn't like millions or anything, but you know the same things that you're talking about, you could be drawing about. Now we're all, we're artists, but like there's people like if you're a writer, there's this dude, I forget his name, but he tweets, short stories like on Twitter. Their limit is 280 characters, I think now. It used to be 140. So he would make a story, like a full story per tweet, you know, and it would be short, like, and it wouldn't, but you could read them, and some of them were really entertaining. You'd be like, wow, that was awesome. And he did it frequently to the point like now, he has all these followers. He has a Patreon, where people pay him just to read the next ones or whatever. And he has other, writing that he shares and stuff on there. But it's marketing, you get in front of people a lot. Um, so the question was about how to get away from just kind of being about what other artists say or whatever, and being about you know what your customers are. And if you're starting with no customers, then you just need to think about it in terms of who is the audience that you want to appeal to. Like, who do you want to be listening to you every day, and talk to them with your art, you know and then find them and make sure that they're seeing your art. And then some of them will decide they like you, and they will become your audience with yours, like you own them. And then eventually you'll have customers, and then you have like a hierarchy of audience, people who don't pay but who really like you and talk about you all the time, share your stuff in different places, people who buy a little bit, people who buy a lot, people who buy a whole lot. Like, you want to have a whole audience, right? Because that's a growth. So once you then have conversations with them, your art should be about the things that they're thinking about, or that you want to talk about with them, and that they want to talk about with you. Like, a lot of artists don't like hearing this kind of thing, because they're like, oh well, I don't want to just make what other people want, I want to make what I want. Well, it's going to be a Venn diagram, where you got two circles and then they overlap, and you're going to make what's in the middle. If you make something that only you care about, do I need to explain to you that only you care about it? And that's fine that you care about it. I mean, I want you to care. But one of the fallacies in conversation that people, when you talk to them, frustrate you and you can't hardly talk to them, is all or nothing.
Mm.
It's not science or art. It's not, you know, fine art versus low art, whatever. It's not that. It's There's an overlap of all the things that are important. You live Your business should be in the overlap. Now, can you make all kinds of stuff that doesn't matter to anybody but yourself? I do it all the time. It's called a sketchbook. You know, for my sanity, I journal. I actually have a blog that's set to private, so nobody can read it, because I'm a blogger. That's one of the things that over time I became a blogger. You know, it's easy. That's the easiest way for me to get my thoughts out is to type a blog. And
Mm.
so for journaling purposes, or you could do it in a notebook or sketchbook or whatever, I journal things in on my blog and in my journals that no one will ever read. I draw things that no one will ever see except for me. And then if I die, people will get them and they can do whatever because I don't care because I'm dead. But you know, that's what that's for. You know, you experiment in your sketchbook. You do things in your sketchbook. Now that's another kind of like private life versus public life. Balance. You can't be a good artist if you only think about trying to please your customers. Because one, as an artist, part of your job is to be a leader, in my opinion. Maybe there's artists who are not leaders, that's fine. But people who call themselves artists generally have something that they want to say or that they want people to hear, whatever. So you have to balance that with that's where being really dope helps you because if you're dope enough, people will consume stuff they disagree with, you know, and they'll consume it anyway. They'll pay you to make it anyway. But um so you don't need an audience of everyone, especially if you deliver a product, if you can get people to pay you for a digital product because once you make a PDF or a MP3 or whatever, selling 1,000 of them costs you the same basically as selling one or selling none. You created it and it's sitting there, and you have a store you're paying, a big cartel store you're paying $6 or $12 a month for. The stuff that's in it might not sell anybody that month. You have to pay the same, and then a million people might buy. You know, because there's models where you pay the vendors based on when the sale happens, and then the thing about digital products is that's awesome is you don't find out. By the time I find out about it, the customer already has it. They're already consuming it. They already paid for it. I just put it up once and then, do some marketing, hopefully to get people to buy it as much as I can. And then, you know, and that's a very kind of artist centric. Print on demand works similar. That's a very artist, fits with the paradigm of artists, because we just want to create, and I think if you can bake some marketing into your creative process so that you create and then you use that creative energy to do your marketing also, not that you necessarily everything you make is informed by marketing, but eventually that's going to be part of it because you're going to see, well, when I do this, people don't care. When I do this, people care. When I do this, people buy. If you choose to only do things that people don't care about, I would argue that you have a mental problem. If you're here, talking about how can I make a living or I want to be an artist full time, but then undermining your own undermining his sales process, and artists do that. That's why I'm saying that because I know somebody out there is arguing in their head with what I'm saying right now. Um, if you're that's a mental problem, and Starving Artists Anonymous is there to try and help you with that. Like that's the reason why I did it, and I say that with no ego because I am the first client of Starving Artists Anonymous. Marshall was around whenever I first started to do it. It was about me like doing research to try and help myself with my own problems, and then just sharing those and people being excited about the things I was sharing.
Right.
Did I answer that question fully, you think?
I think you did. But also Jan actually he's in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
He clarified kind of what he meant with that question. He said
Okay.
this is getting to the point of attracting fans of comics rather than just fellow creators of comics who I
Right.
love, like, because
Right.
within this whole community of comics as well, like we're both
Mm-hmm.
very much wrapped up into the same
I
community of
understand.
comic artists, and it's just like it's so easy to like it's almost like we're sharing in it's like inside
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but
That's a good thing to do, but you also have to do the other thing. So I have this happen with me. This is a normal thing. Like don't be mad at yourself for this, And you either, Marshall. Like, because as an African American creative, a comic book artist, there's a community of African American artists, and complaining always about, we don't support each other, because people are so focused on each other. We're so focused on each other. And the thing is, when you're in a community of artists, like, we're all trying to make it. Like, we don't have money. We can't necessarily support everyone. I actually assume that I'm going to get some support from people who are supporting me because they are okay. All right. So this is actually great. So we can back up. So why are other create artists supporting each? Why are artists supporting each other? Because the story that they have in their mind is people should support artists.
Mm.
And if people supporting artists, in my mind, I'm the fellow artist that's in the 100 days of making comics thing with you, right? And
Hmm.
I'm supporting you. I'm watching your video channel right now to support you because I believe this. My story is that everything will be better if people, if artists, if people supported artists. Also, part of that story is artists should support each other. When I support Marshall, when I support other people that they're other artists, I feel like the world, there's hope for me. I feel like I am doing my part to make things better. That's the story. So your messaging, if most of the people that are supporting you are in those circles, is because the messaging that you're delivering reflects that conversation that those people are already having inside their head. You're doing that. Now, by participating in challenges and stuff like that, you're getting known by the people who participate.
Hmm.
So, what's the three things? Know, like, trust. They have common values with you. So, they'll pay you because of y'all's common values. It stands to reason that if you can get your work in front of other people, and you can also make sure your messaging includes other paradigms that people might be thinking,
Mm.
why does a person buy that? Like, make what you make. Because one of the things that this guy that Jan said is that people who buy comics in general, that's one other audience, but that's not all you should pursue either. Because among other people that like comics, how many of those people would like comics the way you make them? A lot of those people will never support you, ever. My best friend, my best friend Mario, when we met in college. So I had samples or whatever. I was always making comics, even when I wasn't publishing them. I was always drawing them because it was like, it was a part of who I was, like, in a very big way. So I had those blue line comic pages, you know what I'm saying, and I had them in my room, and I was drawing these comics fully drawn, that never been printed even to this day, and they were very like kind of Humberto Ramos, uh, Joe Mad kind of, you know, angular, edgy, cartoony comics, superhero characters, uh, gritting their teeth. It was great. and and Mario looks at so this was my friend Mario. We were friends already, but not close friends. He comes in my room, and I didn't invite him to look at my work, but he just starts looking at it. And he's like picking up pages and flipping through them. And, he's like looking at it, turning it to the side, all kind of stuff. I'm like, what is this guy doing? And he says, you should draw more like Jim Lee. He thinks this is so funny because like now he loves my work, but he didn't get it. And he wanted me to do it different. And so I use that story all the time, for anytime I can, because it makes me feel good to tell it. But in this case, the reason why I'm bringing it up is that a lot of people only want Jim Lee. They only want Mike Mignola. They only want whoever they want. And to a certain degree, comics fans are brutal and nasty. And even if your work is similar to that person, they'll say, "Oh, well, you're a low budget so and so." Like they're just not gonna like your work. It's gonna take other people liking your work for them to like your work. So you need to seek other audiences.
Mm,
That's kind of a captive audience. You're gonna put your stuff in comic shops. People are gonna see it. In that way. You're gonna be. Some of them people are gonna find you. um, Being more clear about what your work is about, what the message is, beyond just that I participate in these challenges and I do these things. Talk about the other influences that you have. If you have a blog or a vlog or whatever, talk about the other influences, the other things. Talk about your if your spiritual views or your whatever, talk about them. Not just talking about how you conform to something, but how you're different from something. So the better that people can know you, maybe because maybe you don't want it to have nothing to do with you as much as the content, in which case everything I just said but about the content, not about you.
mm-hmm,
And talk about it, and think about what might be important to somebody to make them make that decision.
mm,
Not having read your stuff, I don't really know how to advise you about that. I do, if you go to starvingartistanonymous.com, anytime you're on the emails, most of them have on there a thing where you can do a consult. Most of the time, right now, I'm really want that's a product, that service that I want to offer is consulting calls with people where they send me their stuff and I look over it and everything. Book a call, and then as a part of that process, you can send me something. We can have a conversation about it. If you want to have an ongoing coaching relationship, you could pay blah blah blah. I don't know how much it would be, but um, and I can help you out. But the idea being behind that, because people don't want to give me money. The idea behind that is that it's like understand, just get the better that you can understand why somebody might read your comics and enjoy them. What are you trying to do for people, who read it? you
mm,
know the better of answer that you can give to that, like the more detailed of an obviously, just because it's fun and people will like it, that's an answer, but it doesn't necessarily help you that much. So you might the digger that the deeper that you're willing to dig to get that answer, the better that you can determine what you need to be saying that you're probably not saying, or where you need to be talking that you're not talking. Because
yeah,
right now, if you're only attracting other people that are in the challenges, is because you're largely only talking to those people. And it's like as you're getting out into other places, you're talking about it like you're talking to those people. So people like those people might be attracted to you.
right,
But I figure that there's much, much more to your work than that. And so you just need to get better at talking about that and to talking to more people.
right. And I can speak specifically to Jan, and even though it's specific to him, it's still an example for what anybody who's listening can
Right.
do. But Jan, one thing that I know about him is he he's got there's two properties that I think of when I think of Jan, and it's aliens and
Hmm.
The Matrix. He's highly into
Hmm.
both
Oh
of
wow.
those movies.
Hmm.
Find out those. And another thing I can say about Jan is he loves traveling, and so there's that too.
Hmm.
I don't know, that can probably relate. We'll see, but with as far as like aliens and Matrix, you think about that. Why do people like be involved in forums and groups that are into that, and think about like the type of person who would like those kind of things? Like, why do they like those things? Is it they really love
Right.
horror, they really love sci-fi, they really love really kind of deep philosophical messaging, things like that. If you can kind of cater your stuff to that, which you already do, I already know your work, you do. I have a piece of your original art hanging up on my wall right here. um, you know if you can get into the minds of that kind of thing, you can
Hmm.
start unlocking, I think, some of your audience type of situation.
Yeah, so The Matrix is my favorite movie. And when I say The Matrix, I'm talking about The Matrix, not the all of the movies. The other ones are fine. The sequels are fine, but The Matrix is brilliant storytelling.
Mm,
Um, and it is firmly, and I think Aliens is similar too. In that what these movies do, science fiction and horror are primal. Like they mess with you in a primal way. Like
mm,
what's a primal fear? What's a primal feeling? Cyberpunk, cyberpunk genre, which the Matrix is like, a cyberpunk, you know, uh, opus, deals with like how technology, we have technology and it has us, you know, um, all the stuff that we're talking about with Facebook or whatever, all the fears that people are having about Facebook every time there's like a hearing where they show, oh yeah, Facebook did this. You're like, oh my God. And then you're thinking about every time that you did something, that on Facebook that could impact you 20, 30 years from now. Um it it, it takes the Matrix works so well. It became a cultural touch point to where people talk about the Matrix like you should know what I'm talking about because it tapped into like the things that people feel and it gave an explanation for it that is fun to think. It's like, wow, what if that's really what's happening?
mm,
Aliens deals with, like, one of the things that's a primal thing about Aliens is when you feel like something is like you're sick or in your stomach or something, and
mm,
for a split second you don't know what that might be, and it's just a primal fear of an alien, you know what I mean, of a other thing inside you, you know, and that is gonna get out in a way that hurts you, you know. Um Aliens is, it's funny, like Aliens is very much like, um there's a lot of phallic imagery, a lot of rape, kind of fears about rape, and just your body being violated in powerful ways. And it's like putting that on screen. A lot of times in horror movies and thrillers, they do that in a very kind of literal way. A woman running down an alley, and there's like, these, you know, um, unsavory chaps like following her, and they're armed and they're gonna do something to her, and she doesn't want it done, and we're all like, oh no, don't rape the lady. But the thing that's brilliant about Aliens is it takes like gender out of it. Like everybody's afraid of rape. Everybody's afraid of being penetrated by something, you know, and then it's doing it and you don't want it done at all. You know what I mean? And it's happening, and now you're have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. And not only you have to deal with it, it's gonna bust out of your chest, and it's gonna be horrible. And so over and over, like they punch you again and again and again with these very primal imagery. The imagery is designed to to mess with your fears. A certain kind of people in a certain state of frame of mind enjoy that, understanding that and getting behind it and saying, how can I get into a conversation that people are already having? Humans, sell your comics. Your comics are for humans. People don't have the bias against comics that you think they have.
mm,
You know, the reason that people don't buy comics, a lot of them don't know where comics are at. I actually have, if you do shows, I'm sure you have, if you do any kind of show that's not a comic book show, I should say, because I do a lot of art shows that are in nightclubs and, in mall, shopping malls or whatever, just wherever people are. And people will ask me, and I live in Texas where there is more comic shops per square inch than probably any place else in America. And people still say, where do you get comics? Like, because they're not in convenience stores anymore. They're not in convenience stores anymore. So not being in convenience stores and not being where people can see them, people think that comics are gone. Grant Morrison talks about how the superhero has transcended the comic book, and now it's in on the big screen. and on TV screens. And it's better, it's more effective, a medium that's more effective at telling superhero narratives to people, largely because they consume it at scale. Now, um, I think that it's important. So I think that the comic book industry, and most people that know me very well have heard me talk about this at length. The comic book industry, the industry now has low self esteem.
Mm.
You know, it's always, and the funny thing about Hollywood is that Hollywood thinks that comics is trash. They don't like comics. The only reason they make movies about superheroes because they know we will go watch them. They're constantly apologizing for what they're doing. The Marvel movies are the reason why we like them so much is because they don't apologize for making superheroes.
Mm.
They don't apologize like they, when they tell a story about a character, they just say, "Man, this character's awesome. Look." Where because the people who make the comics and who grew up loving the comics are kind of running the narrative. When you look at like the stuff that Marvel doesn't own, still kind of has the old world way of thinking. They're constantly changing the costumes to be more basic, more like the Matrix, which the Matrix was the most successful superhero comic that wasn't about a comic. I mean, superhero movie that wasn't about an actual comic. And they, because and not because the Matrix is less, comic booky than any other, superhero story. It's more like manga, I would argue, in the way that it is and its morals and stuff. It has that going for it. But when something is successful, Hollywood just tries to do, because they think all superheroes are the same, all comic book characters are the same. So they just try and make it more like that, you know. Um, so everything in the industry kind of follows the most recent blockbuster. Marvel really kicked, really came and had a comic book centric storytelling style. So their stuff was more true. I remember whenever the Fantastic Four movies came out, this is how low self esteem that or how much they apologize to the moviegoers for the fact that they're telling a superhero comic story. They're first of all they're making comics about the Fantastic Four, which is the most comic booky, and if you don't like it, Fantastic Four is the corniest thing ever, right? I love the Fantastic Four, but I know that people don't like the Fantastic Four because it's Stan Lee at his Stan Leeist, right? And they have so they got the Fantastic Four actually in the movie in the first ones. They got Fantastic Four largely right. I thought that Jessica Alba was weird casting, but everybody else was great. And uh, now he's Captain America. But I'm forgetting. I'm trying to blank on his name, but he was great as Johnny Storm. Like he was incredible.
Mm.
They Silver Surfer was incredible. Like whenever they got to the sequel, so Doctor Doom was terrible. Like why you can't get Doctor Doom right? He's easy, but no, they couldn't get it right. That's the problem. They were apologizing for Doctor Doom because they thought that a man in armor, they didn't have that like a parallel for that. So they just made him like the Green Goblin from the Spider-Man movie, which was the last successful movie before Fantastic Four. So they just copy. So they try to make the same tone. And so Doctor Doom, they keep making like the Green Goblin, an insane dude who has an accident and gets powers or whatever, and he's insane, megalomaniac. That's not what Doctor Doom is at all. But they didn't try and understand it, so of course they got it wrong. Um, but the more obvious choice, because I love Doctor Doom, he's probably my favorite comic book villain. But you really see it in the second movie, Fantastic Four movie, because they made a movie that has the Silver Surfer in it, and they didn't have no problem with the Silver Surfer, and his belly has a little high def TV in it, and they didn't have a problem with that. But they couldn't get their head around Galactus, a giant dude who uses a giant machine to eat planets. It's Jack Kirby at his Jack Kirbyist. That's what it's for. If you're not gonna have giant man Galactus, with giant spaceship that breaks planets down and eats them, then why are you having Galactus at all? Because you're ashamed of something that is what we showed up for.
Yeah.
But this is just a symptom, you know, because at that time, Marvel was just selling properties like crazy because it was going bankrupt, So that's how they got the Fantastic Four property, and people will make comic book movies sometimes just because that's a thing. People will go see it, but then you have a group of people, a focus group, and they are all ashamed to be involved with a superhero property. So they're trying to make it more of a science fiction property and get away from the superhero aspect of it. All the costumes get darker, you know. Heroes kill everybody that they come in contact with because uh, they're trying to get away from what superheroes are about. It's a plague. Anyway, that doesn't matter what we're talking about. You, I think it's just important to not let the hangups of the comic book industry infect you as a business owner. All you need are your true the people who your comic is right for. Some of those people are already reading comics now. I don't know what your comic is based on what Marshall just said. A lot of those people don't read comics very much. Target them
Mm.
based on your subject matter.
Yeah.
I don't know, like a lot of American comic book creators don't like manga, so they don't. They're like manga is whatever and da da da. Listen, some of your right fans are more of into manga than into comics. You need to figure out how to target them based on subject matter. Target them, speak to what they care about, speak to what they like about. Don't worry about if you could because if you like Miyazaki or you like whoever and other comic book creators you think are gonna like put you in a box because if you talk about that, they don't matter. Like people who don't like what you're doing don't matter.
Yeah.
People who are not gonna ever buy from you don't matter. If you get on my email list before when I wasn't doing daily emails and I start doing daily emails and that irritates you and you don't want to get them and you see that I have like a whole bunch of free content for you. And then at the end or somewhere in it, there's a link where you could buy something and you're just offended that I want to try and sell something to you. And you want to get off my list because of that, that's okay. Like I don't even at this point in my career or in my journey, I don't even have emotions about people who don't like what I'm doing or who decide that they don't like me as a person because of something that I'm doing in my business. Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, I think that we can all agree that other people's opinion of you who are not going to do what you need them to do don't matter. I think we can all agree about that. So, why do you care about it? You know, I think it's if you're at a point where you're like, I can see where these people's opinion, like serving them is limited use. You're starting to see the light, buddy. The people who matter are the people whose actions are going to support your business. And that's more than just buying your stuff, but like if their actions are going to support your business, how do you push their buttons so that they take those actions as often as possible?
Mm.
And so some of those people are not in a traditional comics market. They're never going to walk in a comic shop their whole life. And if they do, it's just to get your book,
Yeah.
you know, like, you know, these web comic platforms. Some people are never going to go on that web comic platform except for you. The When you start to see how much you are the reason that people are showing up, that's when you start making your own platform. If I'm driving traffic to a website that's for creative for crafters or whatever to make stuff, and I'm driving traffic to that site, and I see that site is siphons off the traffic that I deliver, it siphons that traffic off to buy other stuff that don't got nothing to do with me, and my numbers are going down, and I'm driving the traffic, and they haven't built their platform to reward me for giving them traffic. I'm getting off that platform.
Hmm.
That's the way I think.
Yeah, that's something I've been kind of really leading to and harping on a lot lately, and it's so true. Like, it's just it's funny because a lot of comic creators are like, and I felt this way too for a long time. Is they're like, well, the comic industry, the comic market, it's not supporting comics enough for me to actually make a real career. Yet, and I keep saying this name, but Raina Telgemeier, you look at Raina Telgemeier, she makes books for young
Hmm.
adults. These books are in
Hmm.
a comic book form. And
Hmm.
a lot of the people who go to comic shops don't even know who she is. Yet, if you go to any bookstore, any Barnes and Nobles, where there's not, you might not see a lot of people like looking for comics necessarily. I mean, obviously they're there, but her
Hmm.
stuff is there. You go to
Right.
Target, the only comic you're going to find in Target is Raina Telgemeier's books. You
Right. Right.
So, I'm not,
Right.
I'm not,
There's other people. The thing is, there's other people like that person. That's a so that is a once you see the Matrix is great. Like the Matrix is great. Um, once you see the truth, it's all you can see. You know,
yeah.
and I love the Lego movie, the Lego movie. He goes to the real world and he sees, Will Ferrell and the little boy, and then the little boy puts him back in the tunnel. He comes back, he could see everything, and that's when he finally has the power of a master builder, where he can see the parts and how they go together and all that, because he's been in a place where 90 the stuff his what he's going through and all the paradigms that are limiting him are not real.
Mm,
So much of like what people are worried about is not even real.
mhm.
So it's like you're saying, this lady, you never heard of her, and she's stacking paper to the ceiling.
Yeah.
Somebody's selling this, somebody's paying to make this stuff. If it's in Target, that means people are backing it. you
Hmm.
know um I tell people all the time, and I mentioned it before. When I was working for Study Island, I was in a bubble. I was getting paid my money. You know, I was using that money to pay bills, to buy, uniform for my daughter to go to her little private school, doing whatever, living the dream, happy all the time, even though my wife, probably hated me or whatever, but I didn't know because I was just whatever. So it was like I was having a good time, I was doing whatever, but I'm not thinking about, all I could think about a lot of times. And then I got a job and then I got laid off and I'm trying to get work and nobody's hiring me. And I was like looking around. I'm like, I'm applying at Scholastic. I'm applying at, these different places, these publishers and stuff, and nobody's hiring me. I'm getting upset. I'm like, everything that I did while I was doing this freelance work didn't matter because I still can't get work. I talked to um, a lady who was the executive at the company that I worked at, that she had moved on to another job. Now, mind you, this is a job where I made, the time when I worked for them, the pages that I made, I probably made over a 2 year period. I made like 30 grand for them working with them. Um, and then she was like, "Oh, because I was like, well, nobody's ever heard of me. I'm going and I'm showing them my stuff, and my style was a little bit different. So, people in the industry are looking for everybody to be the same. So I need to look more like Jim Lee, and I'm even less like Jim Lee than when Mario said that, and uh because my stuff's real cartoony at that time. It actually looked like cartoons, and it's still like edgy and funky and stuff. And so I know that people who are looking at it are like, okay, whatever. Like um, they might just look at it and turn it aside. Or I actually got people that I would get a call from a creative director who would talk about how good the work was and how he really liked my style, but he wasn't going to offer me a job or let me interview because he didn't think that his boss would like it. It's not what they were looking for or whatever. But I
Mm,
got a lot of that, And at the end of the day, it wasn't really about, so I was talking to the lady and she said, you know, many tens of thousands of kids have read the comics that I made
mm,
during as part of that program. she said, go back to the people and ask them for the analytics, just to let me know that I was not just making stuff that never nothing came of it. You know, a lot of people saw it. A lot of people enjoyed it. You know, they got through it and it helped them too.
Mm,
You know, so, you know, there's way more. And since then, I have done a lot of comics projects, you know, or used comics as an art form, but not even in publishing, and not even, you know, like I might use it on somebody's website to help sell an idea
mm,
or to promote an idea that they're trying to help people. So it might, you know, be or I might work in a live setting where I'm basically making a comic strip in front of people to enter, you know, to be a part of a process, or using comics in a very kind of um loose way that you might not recognize as a comic until you, in the same way like a cave painting, like until you say, oh, okay, he's telling a story, there's words and pictures, da 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 da, you know, and I'm getting paid to do it and I'm making people's lives better.
mm,
So sometimes it's about loosening your grip on being, you know, Will Eisner or being whoever you admire, and saying, okay, I'm Jan and this is what I'm gonna be.
mhm,
And what some of the things that's trying to happen to you is, but they're not happening because you won't let them. So loosen your grip on that. I think that if you make science fiction comics, the potential audience for what you do is bigger than who comes into comic shops in America.
mm.
You know, so, you know, start to think about, how do you talk to a person who would like your story. Don't think about the medium so much, because being raised in the United States has taught you a lot of limiting beliefs about the medium. Think
Well,
about your story.
to be clear, he's not from the United States, but
Okay. Yeah, so he's probably ahead of the game. That's the reason why he's doing better than, you know. But I mean, so our a lot of times we have a lot of limiting of beliefs about the medium that has to do with hangups, you
mhm,
know, not what is real and what isn't real. So a lot of times it's about doing it a lot, trying things, you know, get somebody's theory of how you should market your work and try it a lot. Like, do it for a year, you know, do it hard, you know, do it every day, do it every week, you know, whatever you can do. I mean, obviously making comics is labor intense, but when you have a catalog of material, you know, try it. They actually have ads on YouTube. You know, I don't know if they're expensive or whatever. Since you're already on YouTube, oh, does he have a YouTube channel also?
he does. He's got a great series he
So
does.
you might try marketing, and try marketing your comic. You know what I'm saying, to people who are looking at the Matrix videos, or looking at, you know, stuff from Aliens, or look, you know what I mean. Like, be creative. You know what I mean. Be sneaky. You know what I mean. Get your stuff in front of whoever you can get it in front of that you think is interested in the subject matter that your comic is about, the subtext that your comic is about.
Mm,
Um, so those are things that I think you should pursue, especially if you offer a digital product, because somebody can buy it before before they even think about, do I really want to read a comic? And if they buy it and enjoy it and come back for more, are you going to care where they came from? You're not. You know, are you making your stuff so that people don't feel welcome? One of the things that I think happens is we have like these subcultures within the comics community that I won't name, but, you know, everybody's gonna have an idea of what I'm talking about, you know, and even if it's the same idea I have, doesn't matter to me. But it's like communities within the comic book community that's only us, you know, it's only for us.
mm,
And it's like, you know, if you're limiting yourself in that way, some of the people that you want don't fit that. And it's like funny, because I'm the kind of person, and I know you are too. A lot of times when people are having a debate, like, I like people on both sides of this. Like, why should I pick a side? You know, I remember I like Nas and Jay-Z. You know, I like Biggie and Tupac. Like, what am I picking for? Like, why am I? I'm not in a gang. I don't have to, you know, I don't have to ride or die for this nonsense. I can get whatever I want to get as a consumer, you know. And as far as like, as a business owner, you're gonna build a tribe around your work, not around like whatever politics is going on, you know, and whatever binary, arbitrary, you know, groups that are out there. But you know, talk, think about like the subject matter, your values. So there's this idea of value based selling where you sell things based on the value, right? Well, there's also values with an S based selling, which is like, you know what your values are, talk about your values or what the values that are espoused, the debates that are happening inside your story. Talk about those debates, talk about those things, and attract people to you, because um, search engines like Google and YouTube work off of what people are looking for. So if you talk about, if you subtitle your things, if you use the tags and everything in your videos that are based on the subject matter that you're talking about and the content, not just necessarily the over, get your video in those results.
Hmm.
So if it's a bunch of people, like if you talk about politics in your comics and it's a bunch of political speeches, and then there's one that's a comic strip, what's this about? So when we did Champion of Children, and obviously when I do shows, shows about ghetto manga, there's different places that I might be. And so I do things at different places. Like if I go, but I'm comics and I'm hip hop, right? So one trick that I do is when I go to a comic book event, I don't wear a Spider-Man t-shirt or a Superman or a Green Lantern t-shirt to a comic book event. That makes me just one in a million. I'll wear a Jurassic 5 or a Public Enemy or you know a, um a t-shirt like that, because I'm gonna tell you, if I was at an event wearing a Shadow of the Locust t-shirt and Marshall saw me, he would come all the way across the room to talk to me. Like the last big show I went to was in San Antonio, Alamo City Comic Con. At that event, I was sitting with a notepad with a big drawing tablet, the paper kind, drawing Ghost Rider, and in the word balloon, it had the Wu Tang symbol.
Yeah.
Wu Tang's a rap group for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, and the iconic rap group. Like a Wu Tang Clan fan can recognize the W from Wu Tang from a mile away. So
Yeah.
I'm at the table, and this dude is like cocking his neck, looking like trying to see what I'm drawing, because upside down he saw the Wu Tang symbol, and he had to know what I was drawing. Long story short, he wound up buying that drawing from me for $60.
Wow.
Which I was like, I wasn't drawing it to sell it, but if you offer me money, what I mean, that's what I'm there for, is to sell stuff. And it's like that is that differentiated. If I was just drawing Ghost Rider or I was just drawing Spider-Man or whatever, you might look at it. Later on the same day I was drawing Venom. It was a dude who stood there and he was looking at it, he wanted to buy it, but he didn't want to pay that much. And it wasn't until after I realized that part of the reason was because it was a commodity there. I'm sure, Venom, and the movie was either coming out or had came out already. So Venom isn't a big deal at a comic book show. Wu Tang is a huge deal, but to less people. But
Hmm.
to those people, it's a huge deal. Most of the people at the comic show couldn't care less about Wu Tang Clan, at all. But I made a friend because I was drawing Wu Tang, you know what I mean? Something that had to do with Wu Tang. And
Yeah.
it's like, part of that is just me having a sense of humor about what I do, so that I'm not so serious about, comics that I feel like I have to wear that on my sleeve every day, all day, but when I'm in a place like that, it's fairly obvious. And I'm sitting behind a table with comic books that I made and banner with artwork that I made. It should be fairly obvious to everybody that I love comics. I paid money to be there, but
Yeah.
it's what else there is about me that might matter. So, when you're at a comic show, sure, wear your own merch, do your own thing or whatever. But if there's underlying politics, if there's underlying, and don't be afraid to alienate the people that your work is not for, so the underlying politics, the underlying whatever. But then also make sure that you're not being so alienating that you don't accidentally reduce your audience more than you want to. And I think a lot of times we are very focused on demographics,
Mm.
which is like, age, gender, details about ourselves, like even political party and stuff like that. But we're not, the psychographics is how people make decisions, you know.
Yeah. One thing I think too with that is that kind of thinking again specifically about Jan, and I know we're like kind of honing
Mhm.
in on him, but this
No,
really
it'll be helpful for other people. Yeah.
people. But
And if
yeah.
they want to get honed in on, they need to ask questions in the chat. Hmm.
um, so basically, like I'm thinking of like Jan's YouTube presence, and one thing
Mhm.
that's interesting, I love his videos because it's almost like a travel channel show because he like draws and
Mhm.
then he goes to places because he lives in
Mhm.
Europe and he can go to all these places and it's awesome. But one thing that he did talk a lot about at one point was he took all the Matrix movies and he made a fan
Mhm.
edit of all of them and made it into one movie. Like
Mhm.
that
That's
right
cool.
there, that kind of content is going to bring in people who like the Matrix.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So maybe also, look into people who are huge fans of H.R. Geiger, obviously the design,
Right. Definitely.
the alien stuff. So, you look into that. Maybe you're going to some place, in Europe, and it's like, oh, you happen to have heard in a documentary that H.R. Geiger got, some specific influence from this place. Go visit that place and talk about H.R.
Right.
Geiger. Like,
Right.
that's how you can kind of start getting the people
Right.
interested in what you're doing because you're making stuff like that.
And what it's going to do is it's going to make your business a business that you love being in, because you're going to talk about the things that you care about all the time.
Hmm.
Like you're just going to be sitting around. People going to want to talk to you about it. They're going to invite you, like, the HR Geiger, estate fan society at some point is going to invite you to come and talk about the impact of his work on your life.
Hmm.
The, you know, people who are fans of the Matrix, whatever, are going to have a forum at San Diego Comic Con. You're going to wind up on a panel because you make the viral fan edit that went whatever. Like they didn't even care about your comics. They're gonna invite you for that, and then you're gonna be like, "So what do you do for a living?" "Oh, I make comics. I do this. I do that." "Oh, word, you make comics? Tell us about that." You know what I mean? That's the story of me and Ghetto Manga and how it has benefited me. Is that I've been on panels. I've been like invited to do radio. I invited to do shows like this, and some of those people decided that they felt me and they wanted to support me, you know, because the story in their head was, I want to support guys like that.
Mm.
I want to support artists like that. And so, because, maybe I want to do the same thing or whatever. So yeah, that's really good advice and good observation. And since he's already doing it, more of that probably, you know,
Yeah.
because that's gonna draw in the people. Those people among them are going to be people who are going to enjoy your comics, and ultimately, you know you want to make your living by entertaining and serving those people
Yeah. And
and
also,
interacting with those people, like having a community of those people around you all the time.
absolutely. And also just one thing, like, because I could see like a little bit of objection that could possibly happen is,
Mhm.
well, he obviously does like to make that almost like travel channel type of thing. There's no reason you have to stop that kind of content. Just maybe introduce more and more, as much as you can, at least, of the stuff that directly points, to this stuff, and people will
Mhm.
get into, because that's the difference, that you
Mhm.
know. People in America, especially,
Well,
are.
I think that travel stuff is gonna be good anyway, because he's a human. Like that's like
Exactly.
people are gonna enjoy his humanity.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they're gonna enjoy his humanity, enjoy seeing him out there doing this and that and the third. You know, and if it draws a lot of people, and somehow among the people, you know what I mean? Like it's the overlap of all these things that produced his comic.
Hmm.
You know, and so that's fine. Because again, it's about having a business that fits the life he wants to live.
Hmm.
Now what might wind up happening is he might have, do the travel stuff separate at some point. But I think that when you're it'll make the having them all kind of mix with each other will make all of them more successful probably.
Hmm.
Or separating them fully, so having a channel that's just that and then a channel that's just the other stuff.
Yeah.
um Either one of those could work. I mean, it's for the most part everything works. That's the problem. The problem is every kind of thing works. There's a ways to do it that's, you know you might have to make changes, like tweaks or whatever. I'm never a person who says that people should quit what they're doing and try something else. It's just, if that's what you want to do, you should do that. But it's like, here's some things you can do to make that more effective. um I think that the idea that you should lay down the thing that makes you feel the best, or it makes you feel good about yourself, or that helps you, and you should not do that and then pursue other things, is the reason that we all have, jobs we don't like and different things like that. I mean, if you apply the kind of work ethic that you're forced to have at work because you got a supervisor, to your own work, and then the passion of it, and then wear that on your sleeve, um, and then somehow manage to kind of get out. The main opponent a lot of times is that we fundamentally don't believe in what we're doing, or we fundamentally believe that we should not make any money, or that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like, to feel guilty sometimes. One of the things that happens to artists who make a lot of money, more money than me, is they hit a wall where they're ambivalent about their own success. One of uh Basquiat is, well, like an example of somebody that was making money like hand over fist, but who felt very like he didn't deserve it. Even though he felt like he was doing great art, like a lot of it, I think, is like you internalize that, oh, that's not art, that's not nothing. There's no value there. You shouldn't be doing that. And we, one, stop internalizing that, and then anything that you do will work. If it's not working, it's because you have the story isn't over yet. And sometimes you just have to figure out what detail that you could change. What am I missing?
Mm.
What can I add, or what small thing can I take away? And I think to a certain degree, I tend to say all the time that marketing is the whole thing, the whole show. You
Mm.
know, a lot of times, like, people think the work isn't good enough, and that's just not true. The work's fine. It's not the best work in the world, but like once you get past minimum value, viable, then it's a matter of, because you're always going to be working to improve, but you don't have to postpone your ability to sell your product, you know,
Yeah. No.
or to sell a service, or whatever. So it's just, get out there a little bit more. You know,
Mm. Absolutely.
he sounds like he's on the right track. Um,
Yeah.
you might get to a point sometimes where it's time to experiment with ads, or with trading services. Like, some people are really good at marketing, so you might trade something to them in exchange for them helping you get more marketing. You might do, like, this is more like PR. You get out there and talk, and, like, you have a YouTube channel. You're projecting me out to all the people um, that are following you, but I'm gonna then turn around and share your YouTube channel with everybody that follows me. You know what I mean? Like, so we're both kind of trading a service to get more reach.
Yep.
Because you're serving everybody that's watching this. They're not paying you. They should be, because everybody's watching this. You're serving them, and in exchange for helping you, you're helping me. And then, what I mean? So it's like he can, look for opportunities to do that again among those, based on those audiences. Comics as an audience is great, and that's something because they've already shown that they are willing to buy a comic book. Um, But because you have a product that can be a digital product, so people could buy it before they even decide what they think about the fact that they're buying it, and that's what you want sometimes, because a comic, it penetrates people quickly, and they can get a benefit from it quickly. They can read it and enjoy themselves quickly, and then you get to the end of a particular issue, and maybe it continues, or maybe then you make it easy for that person to follow you, become a fan, or get on your email list, whatever, so you can then you know give them more opportunities to support you.
Mm, absolutely. Well, Samax, you've been extremely generous with your time,
You
and
know how I do it.
really appreciate that. We're definitely we're coming up on 3 hours here.
Mhm.
There's one last question. If you would you be open to doing one last question or
Hey, we could do as many questions as you want. I mean, I'm chilling.
okay.
I want to make sure, because that's the reason why I said I would come back, because I wanted to make sure I answered the questions that your people had.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's still more questions from Jan, but there is one in the chat as well. Uh,
Hmm.
so
I'm chilling. So if you're concerned about me, don't worry about it.
okay.
I'm gonna get to my life whenever I get to it.
Well, I really appreciate that, man. You
I
rock.
appreciate anybody that's actually watching all this. You know what I mean? Like, that was the thing. I actually had people that I talked to that were like, "Yeah, I watched the whole thing." I'm like, "You watched the whole thing?" You know, because it was long.
So that's crazy. All right. Well, I guess we'll just continue with what we have, and so
Sure.
then we have three last questions.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay. So let me just actually we'll take an intermission from Jan's question, and we'll ask Mike Emirates this question, and then we'll get back to the rest of Jan's. Mike Emirates, another great friend within the community. He says, "How do you feel about creating publicly versus privately? In other words, sharing the creative process while you create versus working in secret and then releasing the final work."
Hmm. Okay, so I don't. So there's a spectrum with that, right? Or what do you call it? A spectrum. Yeah, I think that's the word. A continuum.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not all the way on the far. I think that sharing is good. Um, Sharing your process is good, but the thing is also, there's people who care about process and there's people who don't care. So sharing your process will help you with people who care about process. The thing about people who care about process is a lot of them are, ravenous, and they want to know everything. Like, you can't really satisfy them, you know. But uh, there's a lot to say about it. But I believe I don't wait until something is done to share it. I mean, to me, that's too much, especially with comics, something that takes so much work. You're missing out on a lot of opportunities to win people over. And one of the things that, like, so people are moving away from single issue comics, and I think because of graphic novels are beautiful, and the virtuosity of producing a large work, they think, well, I'm going to produce my large work, I'm going to drop it on the world, sell a billion copies, I'm going to be, win. Well, part of the reason that they're not winning is because the most dangerous number in business is one. And when you only have one chance to get the action you want, you're putting a lot of uh, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to get the sales message right, to get the marketing right, to get whatever it is right. When you only get one,
Mm.
people will judge your book by its cover, and if they don't like the cover, and that's all you show them, they're not, and then they don't buy the book. They're not even going to think about it again. Like, if the timing is bad when your message gets in front of them, one of the things I watched a webinar. I watch a lot of stuff about marketing, as I'm sure you can imagine. That I thought was like one of those exploding brain moments was, this guy said, if you're using your ads to point people at a product for them to buy, that's something that an amateur would do. And I was like, what? And so now that's assuming that you don't have, like, many figures of resources to spend on advertising, which everybody listening to this probably doesn't. So
Right.
I've said to you that you should have an email list. Here's why. Because getting people to sign up for your email list, they don't have to spend money. They just have to be interested. You don't have to be a genius at marketing to get someone to be interested in what you're doing. To get somebody to do something that doesn't cost them any money, like um because of a site of things that are designed like off of networking, like YouTube, they might see your um they see like the little thumbnail, and they go, oh, that looks interesting, and they click on the video and look at it. You want that person, even if they don't watch the whole video, to hit your subscribe button, right?
Hmm.
Because you want more opportunities to deliver your message to them for whatever reason, to get them to like your comic, to get them to like you, or just because you want more views or whatever. um, you want to deliver to them as many times as you can. So if you do an ad that gets somebody to sign up for an email list, or in this case, like your YouTube channel, now you can project marketing to them for free as much as you want.
Right.
So that's that blew my mind. Now you can pay for an ad to get somebody to buy something, but you can actually pay for an ad to target people who already like your Facebook page, or who already like they like you. They've already said so. So you pre-qualify them. In marketing language, anybody that you can get to do anything so that you can market to them again in the future is a lead. A person who has made multiple decisions in your favor to say, and you know that they are the person you're looking for, is a qualified lead. The more highly that you can qualify your leads, the easier it is to actually sell them something. So, do they, like this? Do they like your artwork? Do they like your writing? Do they like your artwork? Do they like the subject matter of something? You can qualify people with all kinds of things. The more of those questions that they answered yes to, not that you're guessing, but that they answered yes by doing something, like
Hmm.
signing up, the more often that they've done that, the better qualified they are. Then when you serve something to them, say, hey, you want to buy this? Boom, they bought it. That actually qualifies them to buy something else. So selling something cheap, like a single issue, is easier, you know, than selling something more expensive, presumably. And that's a debatable, right?
Hmm.
But, so more opportunities, doing things, sharing your progress. So if you think of like, I'm writing a graphic novel, I've written a graphic novel and I'm producing it. If you share the pages as you draw them, a person who just kind of likes the first two or three pages, by the time you get to page 50, they might be like, shut up and give and take my money. But if you had just showed them the finished product, they might have been comparing it to other people they know who draw similar, and not having an emotional connection to the work already.
Yeah.
So producing publicly gives you more opportunities to capture someone's imagination, in my opinion. Now there's certainly a school of thought that says, well, you can shock and awe by dropping a my friend Josh, who did I thought about him when you were talking about Jan, because he did a series of like where he traveled around the world and did sketches. He called it Sketch the World. He drew Stonehenge, he drew Big Ben, he drew like all these different places that he went. And then he made a book out of the drawings. It's like 48 double page spreads,
Hmm.
like a PDF you can download. It's beautiful. He made YouTube videos about his travels, and he did all kind of stuff. You watched it happen. I saw all the drawings. As soon as I saw this book, I bought it.
Hmm.
I already saw all the drawings. But he's my friend, but on top of that, I have a relationship with him. Now, in in contrast to that, one time, so I knew Josh, and I had known him for a while at this point, seen some other comics that he made. And he's like, "Hey, are you going to this convention Staple, which is like a small press expo kind of thing in Austin, Texas?" He's like, "Are you going? Blah blah blah. I have this book I've been working on. Da 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 da." I was like, "What is it?" And then he pulls out this book. It's 120 pages, werewolf comic.
Hmm.
I'm like, "Where did this come from?" It shocked me. I could tell that that pleased him. I had no idea he was working on this thing. I talked to him 20 times. Many times he intentionally withheld the knowledge that he had that I didn't have, that he was working on a werewolf comic and it was going swimmingly, you know. So if I bought the book, it's like you meet people at a convention, you already have a book, they'll buy it, not having followed your work or whatever. Um, yeah, I'm not suggesting or saying that people won't buy something, but I just think that it gives you more opportunities. I've worked with people who like to keep everything secret. It's very frustrating for me because I like to get some feedback from the public about what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Some of that is like social media addiction and stuff like that. Maybe it's not good, but you have more opportunities to capture people, and you can actually monetize the process. You know,
Hmm.
If you have like Patreon is a good example of a platform where they monetize that process. Using YouTube or something like that where you have ads monetize that process. Using some kind of blogging or affiliate marketing or something, selling your products that already exist. Um, Allowing people to pre-order in advance. Um, Capturing email addresses is probably the most important one. Capturing email addresses, capturing, other kind of contact information that you can use when you're ready to launch your big project, to launch the finished thing. You can, send a message out to all those people at once. When you see people do a Kickstarter campaign that reaches its goal in the first few days,
Hmm.
it's usually because they had the email addresses stacked up waiting, and they have been creating this thing in front of people. So they had a fan base that was already ready.
Hmm.
So I think that it is probably a good idea. Um, that doesn't mean that people who might give you the opposite advice are wrong. If they have an effective strategy um, for doing it the other way, then I don't argue with results.
Yeah.
But it's just some people are secretive and stuff. I think that being like that is probably bad for you. But I don't argue with results. So feel free to ignore anything I say if you find somebody with results who says the opposite. But they need to have results and data, because there is data supporting um, the idea. You know, Jason Brubaker, who we both know, um, did Remind, and to me, it's like one of my favorite books. His blog was a production blog. It wasn't a web comic. I think that giving out your content for free can devalue your content. That's something that people who don't want to do it are concerned about. I think it's a concern that they have. I think it's something worth thinking about. Um, but I think that you need to do it with as part of a strategy. Just putting stuff out because you want people to like it. Um, they could get where they're not paying attention anymore anyway. And then, that's when you see artists who are frustrated because something used to work and now it doesn't work. And they're like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And they're scrambling. Well, if you capture their email addresses when you're ready to drop the book, you can just email them and they'll get it. Or you do like a launch sequence, and talk about it for a few days and take pre-orders.
Hmm.
And that's what's up, but I think um giving people the opportunity to have a relationship with you by frequency, that relationship will benefit you. So I don't know how you do that if you're not releasing stuff regularly.
Yeah.
Seems
And
like it'll be harder, but I mean that's just because it's not the process that I use.
yeah. And I think there's a lot of ways to go about it. And like you said,
Right.
if it works, then it works. And I think that,
Right.
being involved in a community, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, Mike, I know for sure has, a following, even though he doesn't necessarily. He used to do YouTube a lot, and he doesn't do YouTube a lot. I almost think like he doesn't need to do YouTube as much. I wish he would, just because I want to see more videos because I'm a fan. Um,
Mhm.
but you know, I think if he were to drop a book right now on Kickstarter, it'd probably get funded because he's very much involved in the community. Everybody knows who Mike is, who's
Mhm.
involved in our community, and
Mhm.
there's different ways of going about it.
Yeah, the thing that I would say is that it is dangerous to count on the platforms to do that work for you when there's a way to, because a lot of work went into where he's at.
Hmm.
If he's the kind of person that, if he, because yeah, so people follow you on Kickstarter, you know, and if you post a thing on Kickstarter, people are gonna find out.
Yeah.
Um, and then you can use it because it's actually got a lot of the functionality of email marketing built into it. Patreon also,
Hmm.
but the thing about it is, if they change the way they do things, can you still reach your audience?
Right.
And that's that's the thing that I will be concerned about, because I've been, okay. So whenever was blogging, I was getting like 5,000 hits a day
Hmm.
on Ghetto Man. Google killed the reader, Google Reader, which was a thing that gave you a feed of all the blogs you subscribed to. You could just put the URL in there. Google robots would crawl the site, find the feed of whenever updates, and then it would plug them in so that when you open Google Reader, it tell you all the websites and blogs that updated in reverse chronological order.
Hmm.
Google Reader, I didn't know it. I used it, but I didn't know how much I was depending on it to deliver my content to the people who were reading. But it was like I had so many readers. Now I get like a very small fraction of that in traffic
Hmm.
because of a change that Google decided to make.
Yeah.
And because I was counting on them to not do that. So if I had, and I certainly had enough contact with people and people who emailed me and stuff like that, where I could have easily had a list of 1,000, 10,000 people at that time, but I just didn't, because I didn't capture emails like that. And
Hmm.
I very casually did the marketing stuff that I did do.
Hmm.
If I had a list of 10,000 people, and by the way, I do not have a list of 10,000 people right now. Um, with a list a fraction of that size, you can be successful, you
Right.
know. So it's just worth it to capture people. Even like, you got a YouTube channel. You subscribe, YouTube shows the stuff to people. They make changes when they feel like it based on what they want to do. And it's like, you'll be better off if you also cat you know and I'm not saying like, be a jerk and make people give your email, but if people, say, hey man, if you want to get like notifications in your email, or I could send you useful content and bonus content to email or whatever, and then they get it, and then you have it, and maybe you email them a lot, or maybe you don't. I would, but just to keep it lubricated. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
if you wait until you have something to launch, people might not even remember. Like, what is this? You know, um, there's definitely like different ways to do it, but I remember when I first got into when I was just getting into marketing, I learned the term digital sharecropping. So I want to say Sonia Simone, a copy blogger,
Hmm.
um, and she talked about like how if you build your business on someone else's platform, you don't really own it. You're subject to their rules. And when they change their rules, when the companies go public, sometimes they change their rules. When something happens in the media or whatever, it doesn't even have to be a change of the law. It's just a change of, you know, when the laws changed in Europe, it affected marketing in the United States
Right.
because we have international access on the internet. So, you just the closer that you can get to having control over it, you know, or to be able to dictate how you can reach your audience, it just puts that power in your own hands.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so let's finish up on Jan's questions here. We got what should we know about the back end being a company as a freelancer that is unique to artists, say with billing, taxes, or buying supplies, for example?
Okay, can you read that again?
Yep. What should we know about the back end being a company as a freelancer that is unique to artists, say with billing, taxes, or buying supplies, for example?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what he wants to know. Um, taxes. Wow. So I never ever try to answer questions about taxes because I don't know anything. I you know I basically try and write off everything that I spend on my business, and then accountants go, yeah, right, okay. You know what I mean? And I'm very, I try and get everything, because when you are a freelancer, and you do that and that's all you do, you mostly pay. You don't there's no like tax refund doesn't, that's not a thing that happens in my life. Now you can pay quarterly, pay your taxes, or so basically you should save um between, like 15% of your money so that you have money to pay your taxes.
Hmm.
That's one way to go about it. There's a book called Profit First.
Hmm.
I don't remember the guy's name. It's like one of those like Wizgorowski or something, that even if I knew it, I would be saying it wrong or whatever. So, but you can get it on Kindle, um, on Amazon. It's called Profit First. Get that book. It'll tell you a lot about like how to structure, when money comes in, what you should do about it so that you can pay your taxes and so you'll stay above water. Um, One of the things that artists try and do is compete on price all the time. And when you deal with the realities of what it takes to be a freelancer, you'll stop doing that because trying to be cheap is just bad for business.
Hmm.
Um, you Seth Godin, I think, is where I first heard this concept of race to the bottom. That is like trying to underprice everybody else so that because you think that people will buy your product if it's cheaper or your service because it's cheaper than someone else's. And customers will try and convince you, or clients will try and convince you sometimes that they want your work to be cheaper. If it's not sustainable, the worst thing you could do in a race to the bottom is win. Be the guy that's the cheapest and that everybody hires, because you'll find yourself swimming in work and not have time to do a good job, and everybody will hate you because you're late, and uh, and because everything is not what they expected, because you're not devoting the time to their piece that wanted you to, because they underpaid you. And that we could do a whole show about why to do that kind of pricing or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, I The freelancing course that I take is from it's like a coaching program called the No Pants Project. So called because if you're working from home, you don't have to wear pants, not because people run around naked, so you can. I'm wearing pajama bottoms right now, and I feel like I'm being very professional because I don't need to have pants on to do this. When I interact with my clients, it's usually in this kind of thing or whatever, and if I look presentable from the shoulders up, then I'm good to go.
Right.
Um, but I recommend the No Pants Project a lot because one of the things they do is talk about pricing. Um, their No Pants Project has a YouTube channel. There's a podcast. It's on all the podcast apps or whatever. I recommend them both. Um, their coaching program is not cheap. If you got the money, I recommend it. But if you don't, please get the free information you can get from it because it has really helped me. But uh, the point, to the question, you're gonna need, with taxes and stuff, you're just gonna need to charge, enough so you can pay them, because you're gonna pay taxes. One of the benefits that you probably don't appreciate about a job is that they help you pay your taxes.
Hmm.
They take your taxes away from you, so you actually don't pay them. They pay them for you.
Right.
And then you're talking about the government needs to give me my money back, because you overpaid. Um, it's early in the year. Well, it's almost April, but it's a good idea to just go to a if you're freelancing, just go to an accountant and either on the phone or just sit down and talk to them about taxes and what you need to be doing to be prepared to pay your taxes the next year.
Yeah.
Um, I'm the worst, so I'm the worst when it's time to deal with all that. It's still very painful for me, and uh, that's one thing that really motivates me because you get into a spot where you're paying, or you're on the hook for stuff, but you're still not making the kind of money, because the when you're working for jobs, they take care of that for you. So most Americans just don't really feel the impact of taxes. We look at like what refund we're not getting and what things we're not getting, and we feel like, oh, it's too much. But if you deal with somebody who actually pays out of pocket at tax time, I mean, it's like you're buying something, but you're not getting anything.
Right.
It's like going to buy a high end something, you know, and but then you don't get anything because what you got was the roads you drove on, and you know, you know, some kind of semblance of safety and protection, whatever society is doing for me. I don't quite know. I'm just kidding. But so I'm not the guy to talk to about taxes. When it comes to supplies and stuff, almost all the supplies that you spend money on is tax deductible. Please keep receipts and records and all that. I use PayPal for a lot. PayPal produces good records. QuickBooks is probably better. So just use something. It's one of those things like one of the worst fallacies is all or nothing. If whatever you can do it. It's better to if you can't brush your teeth for 2 minutes, it's better to brush for a minute than to not brush at all, right? So, um, I think other kind of I guess tidbits or whatever that he might be looking for, I could probably answer better if he has a more direct question. It's a little bit broad. So I wound up fixating on the thing that I knew I couldn't answer effectively as taxes. Buy the book Profit First for a lot of good tips on how to structure the financial side of your business. As far as artists, I think that artists should the thing that is advice that's specifically for artists is that you should um, make sure that you're being productive. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Because artists tend to focus. I don't know what the deal is with artists and drug use. You probably shouldn't do drugs. It's not good for you. You know what I mean? It doesn't help. I mean, as much as people like to think that it does, um, I don't ever feel limited creatively, and I never done drugs. So I mean, probably shouldn't do them. Um, or if you're gonna do them, because I'm not actually like one of people like drugs aren't a big deal to me. Like if you want to do drugs, just take care of yourself and know what they're doing to you and try not to hurt yourself. Um, Same with alcohol and cigarettes and bacon, whatever. Try and take care of yourself. We talk about that. Be Think about just keep marketing in your business. Don't don't make it an afterthought. Um, And yeah, you should go, you should go to starvingartistanonymous.com and get on my on my email, because I could actually probably research things that y'all are asking about that I don't have a good packaged answer for, and then write you some good emails or whatever, but or
Yeah.
refer you to people who are knowledgeable in all the ways that I'm not on that. But I think artists should learn sometimes from other businesses, like how things are done, um, and then apply them to what they're doing. You know, um, and there's different kinds of strategies. A lot of the strategies that I wind up talking about are about service, because I'm in a service frame of mind. But when you're selling products like paintings and sculpture and things like that, um, look for. Oh, okay, yeah, I don't want to mess up their names. I'll talk. There's that guy Chris Wilson Studio. He's very big on and I think his website is just chriswilsonstudio.com. He's very big on the idea that no matter what kind of art you make, there's a business model that you can use. He's big on art launches, using emails to launch art.
Hmm.
You can see that these tactics have a tendency to work on other platforms. So I'm big on email, and I think he is too. But also, you can use Messenger, you can use text messages, you can use LinkedIn, you can use Facebook to some degree. Um, you can use Instagram. Follow the people who you see that are killing it, and ask them these questions too. A
Hmm.
lot of times, people aren't going to tell you because they don't want to they consider it trade secrets, and they think that they tell you anything, they're giving away, whatever. And that, don't get mad at them, that's just part of it. um but again, I just whatever is working for other people, or whatever has worked for you in the past, like, go back and do that again. Follow up with people who have actually bought from you in the past, or who have hired you in the past,
Hmm.
and do follow up. That was something that I had to be taught. Like, I forgot that was something I should be doing systematically. Keep lists of your customers, keep up with your customers' personal, lives, or their businesses, be appropriate or whatever, but keep up with what they are achieving, and be a fan of your customers so that they can um, see that you care about them, and it's not just you trying to drag money from them all the time.
I like that. Be a fan of your customers. I
Yeah, yeah,
actually do that a lot. So
yeah. You do. Hmm. It's
uh,
like, be a fan, support them in what they're doing. Like, I mentioned, sometimes I'll mention one of my clients in an email, and they freak out. They're like, "Oh man, thanks so much." I'm like, "I'm just mentioning you," or like people who subscribe to my email list, but they don't really buy a lot.
mhm,
Um, because because of the nature of what I do, I go look into people, who I'm working with. And
right.
so I wound up learning about them, and I'm like, "Oh, well, this person does this, and it's great. You should check it out." And so that's extra for them. Um, build a community around yourself and around your work. Like, literally make a Facebook group for your fans, you know,
Mhm.
if they want one.
Yeah.
Literally, there's all kinds of things that you can do to take advantage of the way that community mindedness works, you know, but participate in their lives, not just, in their work. Like, that's one of the reasons that these people, like, they're, he was talking about earlier, you guys in the different challenges support each other. So that can happen anywhere, so you can initiate it with
Absolutely.
just the people who are supporting you or fans of your work.
Awesome. All right. So his last question is I took that idea last week and applied it in my input for an awareness campaign at work, became a one-page comic. But if I'd want to take that and market it to other companies, do I make 10 first for a portfolio or just cold call?
Either one. Um, one of the tactics that I use a lot is cold email. So I'll go to their website. I'll find. So there's a lot of different. things you might do. And one thing you can do if you're a YouTuber, you can look at the person, the client that the prospect that you're wanting to work with, and you can look at them and go at their site and say, okay, here's something I think is missing, and you can send them an email or make a YouTube video that's private just for them, and be like, hey, I was looking at your website and here's what I saw and here's what I think. Just a little something for you. If you want more help, or you want to talk about ways that maybe I can help you, here's some ways to get in contact with me.
Hmm.
That's what I do a lot of times. Sometimes because I like somebody's stuff so much, I'll make like a little comic strip and I'll just, put it on my site and tag them, or I'll send them an email with it in it, you know, whatever. Um, I don't, if you're comfortable calling, you could do that. If you're not, you can email. If you don't want to do that, you can make a video. Like
Right.
anything that you can do when you're personalizing something, people are like, wow, that's great. Now, sometimes what's going to happen is they're going to say, hey, can I use this? They're not going to want to pay for it. And they can, if you made it already, you could just let them have it. And then they just take it and run, and that's it. You know, um, these kind of things work the more that you do them,
Hmm.
because they don't work every time. There's very seldom things that are going to work every time. You put a gun to people's head and tell them to give you money. Sometimes you're going to have to shoot them, right? And that doesn't even work every time, right? But sometimes people are like, no, I ain't giving you my money. I don't
Right.
believe you'll shoot me. But so there's an idea that they talk about in a coaching program called outcome independence. It's
Hmm.
very important that people don't feel like you're like starving,
Right.
like you're desperate, because then they won't believe anything you say, because they're like, he's just saying that because he wants me to pay him. And you are, like that's the funny thing. Like sales, people don't like to be sold to, but everybody likes to buy.
Yeah.
And so you have to figure out how to sell to people without crossing their boundaries, or you could just sell to as many people as you can. And then if people don't like it, they can say no. That's the ultimately where you have to get to if you want to be a professional, is you have to get comfortable with the idea of people saying no thank you. And that
Hmm.
every now and then somebody's going to hate you for trying to sell them something.
Right.
Their opinion doesn't matter. Like the opinion of the person who doesn't want it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like you're looking for it. So your goal isn't to be liked by everybody, or for everybody to like what you're doing, or everybody to think what you're doing is a good idea. You know, the goal is to find your people
Hmm.
that can support your work, that'll pay
Absolutely.
you for what you're doing, preferably like so that you can add that up to a living wage. And maybe all you really need is to make a little bit of money on the side. That's cool. That gives you some flexibility. But if you need to make enough money, then that means you just got to do the work to get to as many people as possible. So I think that any kind of cold whatever, if you got the stomach for that, you are gonna make it,
Mm.
because you make it by the things you're willing to do that your competitors or your other people are not willing to do.
Mm.
you know and the more that you refine who you are and what is your like value proposition, the less competition there is, because people who need something very specific that very few people give that very specific thing, the it's less competition. And the thing is, most people don't want to find everybody who could do what they want. They want to find somebody that can do it good enough.
Mm.
So by being assertive in your marketing, that's going to help you a lot. um so um that's a free method. Cold cold contacting people doesn't cost any money.
Yeah.
You could do it as much as you want to.
True that.
Um, if you're able to tolerate, people saying no, or like sending messages to people who don't ever reply, following up and sending a message to somebody, people agree to do something, and then when it's time to pay for something, then they disappear. So if you're willing to say, hey, I was just checking to see if you were still interested, and until they say, oh, you know what, something came up and I can't do it. Okay. you know,
Yeah.
because sometimes it's just they got busy and they forgot or whatever. So if you're not willing to follow up, you're gonna, you would lose that needlessly.
Right.
So I'm excited that you're, doing things and taking actions, because the people who take actions eventually win, because most people are just not gonna try.
Absolutely. Cool. And yeah, let me just double check the chat. But yeah, the very last thing that Jan wanted to ask that he added on here was he wants me to ask you what you're currently working on. That's
Yeah.
project type of thing.
Okay. So I have multiple irons in the fire, so to speak, right now. Um, I have an ongoing assignment with the No Pants Project. I told you I was in their coaching project or whatever. I mean, their coaching program. It's a lifetime membership or whatever. So,
Hmm.
but I actually eventually became, like, they have a blog. I actually eventually, like, got to where I was I'm writing two blog posts a month for them, and then I make a one panel comic strip that goes with each post, and they pay me for that.
Hmm.
Um, so the strip that I do for them is called Freelancer Life. It's all about, just freelancing and what that's like. And then I write blog posts about, freelancing and, how to be more effective. If you go to any of my sites, and especially my social media, I'm always sharing those. So you'll see them and you'll see links to them. You know, I make them to try and help freelancers. So check them out. I think that the site is really good. It's to try and get you to sign up to the coaching program. It's not a cheap program,
Hmm.
but they give a lot of content, like a lot of knowledge, like a lot. And when I say a lot, like you'll be overwhelmed.
Right.
So if you're enjoying a conversation, that I'm able to give, the advice that I'm able to give, and you're seeing holes of where I'm maybe not quite answering your questions a lot of time, if you go on there and stab around, um, I'm not the only blogger there. There's a lot of us, um, people that are getting paid to blog for them, and uh, it's a good place to get information. Obviously, I would really appreciate it if you. I'm working all the time on Starving Artists Anonymous after having it for years, the URL for years, and then blog up for years. I'm really kind of working on it now to make it useful for other artists. So technically, that's something that I'm working on.
Hmm.
Um, I communicate a lot with comic strips, but I also write um, blog content in my emails and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for new clients and for blogging and comic strips and other kinds of content. Um, but I have so No Pants Project is ongoing. I also have there's a comic that's launching very soon that I've been working on called Born Again Thugs
Hmm.
uh, for a client.
Hmm.
I'm doing artwork on it. He has another artist who's doing some artwork. I've been working on that stuff off and on for a while because he sells T-shirts and things like that with art, and I made some concept art that for T-shirts. He initially hired me to make T-shirts for him, but now I'm working on a comic. Yeah, I produce like 2 pages a month. Like, I'm not going super fast, but he's paying me for that.
Hmm.
Um, I also have another client. I'm working on a book called Biggs. It's like B dot, it's Biggs, but it's like with dots. If you go to bigscomic.com, I actually did art on issue 3 in the fall, and then now I'm working on issue 4 slowly but surely. If you're in the Dallas area, I think I'm gonna be at one of the shows in May that's coming up in May with them. But if you go to bigscomic.com,
Hmm.
you can look at that comic and you can see I did the artwork, all the artwork for issue 3, and then I'll be also on issue 4 when it comes out. I'm splitting the art with my friend Khalid Robertson. Well, me and Khalid go way back.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm working on those comics. There's another comic called Open Source that I'm working on for a client. It's in a very early going. Um, I'll be sharing some stuff in my emails if you subscribe to my emails, or if you follow, my. It's, I haven't posted any of the open source stuff on Instagram, but I shared some of it in my email. That was so I'll be sharing some of that stuff as I go, just kind of trickling out. It's a science fiction comic.
Hmm.
So I work on all different kinds of stuff. I have some of my own projects, but I don't really talk about them that much because they're very back burner,
Hmm.
and I usually wind up on working for clients. So one of the reasons that I always tell that I encourage people to raise to have as high of prices as they can manage is so that they can work part time for themselves, and they can work part time for clients, but then also work on their own projects to sell. I haven't really over the last few years. I really got away from producing my own projects, um, because I spent so much time doing freelance work because I wasn't charging enough. So I'm kind of in a transition um, between lower paying jobs and like I'm being paid pretty good for No Pants Project, for the work that I'm doing for them. Um, as I complete some of these other projects that I'm on, um, I think that I'll get back to doing more of my own work.
Hmm.
But even that is probably going to a lot of it revolve around Ghetto Manga, my magazine.
Hmm.
And it's a blog and a Facebook page that's about comics broadly and hip hop culture, and in particular when those things overlap for me. Um, I really enjoy it. So I try and make comic strips. I'm always making like little strips here and there. The best thing to do is to follow me on the on my on social media, and then on my URLs, so that you by email or the blog, so that you can kind of get a sense of what I'm doing. I'm all over the place, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that people be as scattered as I am, because it's hard to dividing your attention. Just divides your results.
Right.
But when I got into freelancing, I really approached it from the hustle, 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 grind, grind, grind. Sleep is for later kind of mentality. And as I'm kind of getting away from that, um, I do need to serve all the clients, that I took on. Um, I'm in the middle of that. But I say that, but I'm really proud of the projects that I'm working on. I think in particular, uh, No Pants Project is really helpful to people, and the work is helping people, and so, like, it dovetailed with what I was already wanting to do with Starving Artists Anonymous. So you'll see like a lot of play back and forth between the two.
Hmm.
Um, so to that end, I mean, there's a lot of projects that I got on the back burner. I did I have a comic called Man Child, which is about um, he's like a 3-year-old assassin, uh, that I've been working on probably for like 15 years off and on.
Hmm.
So I haven't produced a whole lot of work there. Obviously, I did Champion of Children with my friends in the early 2000s. Those comics are still available. You can buy them online.
Yeah.
Um, about little kids superheroes. Um, but at this point, really, what I'm doing more than anything else is trying to help other people, with my work. Um, and really, trying to build my living around helping other freelancers in particular, and just, people like not just artists and people who are freelancers, but like people that build, businesses where they help other people um to transform their lives, whether that's people that coach people or um businesses, like I'm also like kind of interested in helping ministries. I think that like if you make comics about religious content, I mean, one opportunity for you is to develop partnership with ministries so that y'all, help each other. But that's a whole other podcast. Um, so I'm not doing so much of my own stuff right now, just because I'm really energized by helping other people.
Yeah.
But I mean, um, one of the things that I like doing is teaching people how easy it is to write. Teaching artists how easy it is to write from their ideas, how to get started writing. Because writing can be and is an art of its own, and it can be really hard, but it doesn't have to be if you want to write your own stuff. Um, because if you can't afford to bring somebody on to write for you, I like to do things to help teach people, teach artists to write their own stuff.
Hmm.
I think being productive is better than being good, you know, um, because you get good by being productive.
Hey, you're speaking my language now.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and we, that is where, like I remember when we were having a private conversation before we did the first interview.
Hmm.
One of the things I said was, I was like, yeah, your work is good enough, to do this or that. You
Hmm.
know, it's easy to get bogged down in trying to be as good as the people that we admire. But when we get there, we're not going to be them. We're going to be different anyway. So just getting out of our head and getting it into the public where people can where it's a result now, so when it comes to quality, getting it out where people can, you can see how it is or isn't meeting their needs, or for even from an entertainment perspective, is
Yeah.
better than like trying to perfect it in private,
Hmm.
in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I will say, one thing too with your stuff is, the stuff you mentioned that you're working on that is not exactly your property. I mean,
Hmm.
everything when I see that stuff, like you really make it your own. So like
Right.
I almost am like confused. I'm like, wait, is this his thing or is this somebody else's? Like, you really make
Right.
it your own. So I mean, just follow. I would just say follow Samax, check or Samax. So hard to not say that. Follow Samax and try. Just check his stuff out because he's always just making really cool stuff, and I recommend anything he makes for sure. I'm going to be checking out some of these links I didn't know about.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, once again, man, I just really appreciate you spending all this time. You've been very generous, and I think there's so much to learn from what the two videos we just did. And so, yeah, thank you
Mhm.
just so
No
much, man.
problem. No problem. I mean, I'm learning a lot myself. I've learned a lot over the years. I'm still learning. Um, I I'm passionate about artists being empowered, you know, um, and inspired, but just empowered to kind of get out there and make their mark. I mean, I think that the world will literally be better
Hmm.
if artists can make a living from their art. Not so that everybody can go out and buy Lamborghinis and snort cocaine or whatever off of models, backsides or whatever, but because happier people, go out and do things, you know what I mean, that make the world better. I mean, if the reason that the main reason that people don't do stuff, do follow their own path, is because they don't know how, but they kind of don't know that they're allowed to,
Hmm.
and so I want to give people permission to do it. That's something that I've been doing for years and years and years. It's like, look, you could do it. But then I didn't necessarily know how to make it work. So that's, how people get to like kind of starving artists is virtuous, at least you're pursuing your passions or whatever. Well, I don't think it's virtuous. I think we're just dumb about business. So like now I'm really about saying, hey, it's okay. Like, if people have good feelings about business when if artists have good feelings about business when I'm done with them, even if I wasn't able to get them across the finish line of being like rich and without selling their souls or whatever, um, I feel like I did a good job. But I mean, I'm finding that it's very doable and it's not necessarily as complicated as we make it. In a lot of cases, the complication that we're bringing to it is what's making it not work, not that it's complicated, you
Mm,
know?
yeah.
So I get excited about those things and I do everything like I own it, like that's one of my core principles. The Jay-Z, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman, you
Yeah.
know? So when you're a business, you take ownership of the people that come in contact with. Those people are yours. And it's like the messages that I receive from people, I try and do things in a proper way, so it's not like I don't steal from the people that I'm working with, but they all to a man or woman appreciate that I get out here and kind of be the face of their franchise to people, because they're paying me to make stuff um and I pick, just as much as like your clients pick you, you should be picking them. So you pick to work with people that you're excited about what they're about,
Hmm.
you know. And I do have clients that don't let me share their stuff. They're like, "No, we like to keep it here," and so you don't know about them, But um, and if somebody asks me, when they're like that, and when somebody asks me, I'm like, "Yeah, I don't really talk about them because they don't want me to talk about them like that. They just want my drawing hand. They want my strong right hand.
Right.
But normally, I'm gonna promote what other people are having me work on because I want them to have success with my work. I've done a bunch of comic strips, so it sounds like I only do business comic strips. I did a comic. There's a guy J.R. Lamar. I've done a couple comics with him. One is called Jinx, Djinnx, about a genie who only messes up whenever people make wishes. There's one called Life Underwater that's about a mermaid dating basically, and just all the friends and that the mermaid has underwater. um I do a lot of stuff for him. His his website is called mycomicstripclub.com.
Hmm.
So if you go on there, you'll see a bunch of the strips that I did with him, but he works with multiple artists. um uh there's a comic I'm working on called The Brother with Jay Kelly. I actually do comics with him that I guess would be like self-publishing. I did a comic strip called OJ, which is like about he's funny, so I just make comic strips out of his social media updates sometimes, and they're funny because he's funny, So when you go on Ghetto, they're mostly on Ghetto Manga or whatever. Um, so that's where you'd be most likely to see them. So, I mean, I do a lot of different stuff. I try and have fun with it. And in my pursuits of, wanting to work with business clients, I have done, I've started to kind of think like, or you know what? A lot of the comic strip stuff came about because I started to see how it felt creative to comment on posts on Facebook or to have memes and stuff, but it's not creative. It's not very creative. So one of the things that I knew I wanted to make more comics and do more comic strips. I'm never satisfied with my output. And so I decided to, instead of doing something that seemed creative, to make it creative. So um, to comment on things with single panel illustrations and just draw something real fast,
Yeah.
um, and do stuff like that because it would have the added benefit of showing people that I'm good at making comics.
Hmm.
And it really impresses people when you draw something um, about what they said or did. Um, I wish I had the energy to do it more, like every time. you know, I wish I could make like I have a YouTube channel, never not put nothing on. Like one of the things I want to do is like just if I want to talk about something, like rant about something, just make like a series of panels, record myself talking, and then bam, 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 like scroll through the panels as the video.
Yeah.
Um, maybe I should get a sponsor or something for that, but so it can pay for it. Once you made One of the hardest things about self-publishing is once you've been paid to make comics, it's pretty hard to make them make them for free. But once you have content, then you can sell to your audiences. And so that's one of the reasons that I wanted to learn marketing anyway, was just to learn how to monetize the things that the catalog of material I've already made.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, I think we've done it. I think we've covered just about anything we could here.
Yeah,
And
it's like I want to apologize to everybody who sat here and listened to us this long, that you didn't get paid to listen to this because it's a lot of your time that you devoted. I hope you can get something out of it.
well, in the
you
chat,
know.
we're getting a lot of thank yous, and people have
Hmm.
stuck around and hung out, and they'll watch on the replay too. So, yes, thank you very much to the chat for hanging out with us. This
No
was
doubt.
but fun. Once again, you can find all the links for Samax in the description. You know where to find me. All my links are in there as well. And yeah, just thank you so much, man. And I think we're out.
No problem at all. All right.
All
You
right.
enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You too, sir.
Hmm. Bye bye.
All right. Later.